Chapter 1472. Chapter 1472 Xiao Ning's Secret. But Zhao Qikuan's follower is a mystic late phase, that's not good. Yushan won't let go of any chance to humiliate me. How about this, why don't you go alone? Since your goal is the fruit, you don't need to get involved with me, I don't want to drag you down with me. Yu Bing's heart started pounding after hearing Qijiu's strength. After all, the difference between him and Lin Yi was too big. Even if Lin Yi really did break through to mystic late phase, he just broken through. And compared to someone who'd already broken through, he was at a disadvantage. Plus there was this mystic mid-phase peak Yushan. If he went up against Qikuan, and Lin Yi went up against Qijiu, with Yushan ambushing them from the sidelines, who could handle that? Ha! But don't worry too much, I have a trump card. Lin Yi said. Even if it's an earth class, I have a chance to heavily injure him, so don't say things like that again. Since we're fated to meet again, we're still a team. Really? You can heavily injure an earth class? Yu Bing's eyes went wide. Fuck. Aren't you a little too strong? No wonder Xiao Ning likes you, you're a super scion. Let's not talk about that. Lin Yi interrupted Yu Bing. Some things were in the past and it wasn't that easy to start over again. Although it wasn't that easy to forget. And it was even more profound, Lin Yi really didn't have the courage to bring it up again. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had found the happiness that belonged to himself, Tang Yun and Xiao Xiao. If he could stay with them for the rest of his life, that would be a type of happiness. As for other fates, there was no need to force it. Between him and the hidden house Yu, there seemed to be enmity from the beginning, and it was impossible to mediate until now, unless Yu Ning's father could let go of the hatred of the secular house Yu and accept Lin Yi. But someone as proud as Lin Yi, even if he went to the hidden house Yu, he might not get along well. This was what Yu Ning wanted. Lin Yi couldn't give it before, and he couldn't give it now either. The environment they grew up in was too different, and Yu Shaochen wasn't a reasonable person either. This meant that there wouldn't be anything between the two. So instead of being disappointed, it was better to have nothing. You don't like Ning? Yu Bing didn't end the topic and asked back. So what if I do, so what if I don't like her? Lin Yi asked back. If you like her I can help, Yu Bing said. Help? You're thinking too simply. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Do you think there's a chance of resolving the conflict between me and the common house Yu? At least you didn't offend the hidden house Yu. Yu Bing said sincerely. If you really want to, I can really work hard. There are some things you don't know, but I can feel it from what your father told me. I can see some problems as well, Lin Yi said emotionally. Lin Yi sighed. I don't know if you've noticed, but your house Yu values her more than you do. Although Yu Bing didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that Lin Yi's words hit the nail on the head. Yes, in house Yu Ning's position. She was more important than him, a direct descendant. The old ancestor of House Yu loved Yu Ning to a degree that even surpassed normal doting. The way his grandfather looked at Yu Ning was like he saw the future of House Yu, the glory of House Yu. But when he looked at him and Yushan, he wouldn't look at Yushan like that, only sternness. I don't know what secret she has, but I feel that she... Lin Yi didn't finish his sentence before Yu Bing subconsciously covered his mouth. Shoo! Yu Bing jumped in fright, but then he remembered that they were in an inn, not house Yu. This was an inn, not house Yu. He couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. I'm sorry, it's just a reflex. What's wrong? Lin Yi was confused by Yu Bing's actions. I asked my father curiously before, just like you, about Ning, but I was sternly told that I'm not allowed to ask or talk about it anymore. Yu Ning is a taboo in house Yu. No one dares to talk about it. Yu Bing shrugged. I subconsciously thought that we were at house Yu, so I was afraid that someone might hear us. As expected. Lin Yi sighed, so, it's better not to think about some things. But you're not weak right now, Yu Bing said. You've actually become a mystic mid-phase peak, and you're about to break through to the late phase. I really didn't expect that. Our family has treasures to make elixirs, but you probably don't have them. I have my own way of practicing, Lin Yi said. Strength isn't the important thing is that I just offended your family. Just? Yu Bing paused. This is a qi gathering pill, I got it from someone called Elder Yu. Lin Yi took out a small bottle and put it in front of Yu Bing. Qi gathering pill. Yu Bing's eyes were wide open as he stood up with a whoosh, looking at the bottle in disbelief. Lin Yi's move had shocked him to the point where he couldn't believe it. It wasn't just because it was a qi gathering pill, but also because he got it from Elder Yu. Yu Bing's face changed. He naturally knew what a qi gathering pill was, and he knew that House Yu had sent Yu Huashing to the tomb to steal it, but he never would have thought that the reason why Huashing couldn't find the pill was because Lin Yi had stolen it. Yu Bing's first thought wasn't on how to get the pill back. Although his father needed it, Yu Bing knew that this was the rule of the martial world. This pill didn't belong to Yu Huashing, it belonged to the tomb master, and so it belonged to whoever got it first. It didn't belong to anyone, so there was no way to get it back. What Yu Bing thought about was that Lin Yi trusted him the most. It was such a secret, and it was related to House Yu, but Lin Yi was still able to tell him. This touched Yu Bing a little. Otherwise, Lin Yi could have just not told him and he wouldn't have known. Do you think that the hatred between us can be resolved? Lin Yi looked at Yu Bing's expression. There was no anger, no greed, only shock and helplessness. Lin Yi wasn't wrong about him after all. Lin Yi actually wanted to test Yu Bing's character and thought, even if Lin Yi didn't take it out now, if they really couldn't find the fruit in the test, then this qi gathering pill would become the pill Lin Yi used to exchange for the fruit with the Ice Palace. Chapter 147 School Beauty's Personal Expert. Chapter 1473. Chapter 1471. Yu Bing's invitation. The trial of the Ice Palace is based on the number of treasures found on the snowy mountain. However, you can also fight for each other's spoils. In other words, the strong are respected. Whoever has the most treasures in their hands will be the winner. Yu Bing continued, before the test, everyone will be given an ice mountain jade. And it's said that this jade can not only score the treasures you get, but it also has a recording function. In other words, it's impossible for you to keep any treasure for yourself, unless it's taken by force. Otherwise, as long as it's on you, the jade will show. Lin Yi nodded. That magical? Lin Yi was a little surprised after hearing Yu Bing's words, but to an ancient sect, having such a magical jade wasn't much. Yeah. Yu Bing nodded. So, if you really want the fruit, there are only two ways. Either you win the test and get the right to trade, or you sneak away during the test. But these two ways aren't absolute. The first way is possible even if you get the right to trade. If the Ice Palace doesn't have the fruit, or if they don't want to trade with you, even if they do, there's nothing you can do. The second way is easier, but I'm afraid that you won't be able to find it, or even if you do, you won't be able to bring it away. Even if you and I work together, we won't be a match for the Ice Palace. Yu Bing naturally treated himself as one of Lin Yi's people. Analyzing the problem from Lin Yi's point, this made Lin Yi very touched. The two met because of Yu Ning. Yu Bing wanted to test if the man who made his sister fall in love with him was capable, and so the two had to fight. But back then they were both golden class masters, and now they were mystic class masters. The second way is a good way, but you don't have to worry about running away. I'll let my friend eat it during the test, and when the fruit is gone, the Ice Palace won't be able to find anything without evidence. Lin Yi smiled. But I'm afraid they won't be able to find it. Eat it. Yu Bing's eyes widened in shock. Everyone knew that treasures were good stuff, but even good stuff couldn't be eaten directly. They had to be made into medicinal soup or pills by the family's pharmacist before ingesting them. Eating them directly might not be able to achieve the desired effect. Instead, it would cause the qi in the body to go berserk. He'd never heard of anyone eating raw treasures. Even if they did, they'd only eat it in small pieces or they'd explode. My friend's situation is different from normal people. This isn't a training treasure. But the situation right now was different. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was confident. Zhang Liju had mentioned that the fruit could be consumed directly, but there were a lot of side effects after ingesting it, such as weak body, short lifespan, inability to practice, and so on. Xiao Xiao was about to die, and it was good enough that she was still alive. Why would she care about being sickly and having a short lifespan? Then, where's your friend? Yu Bing asked curiously. She's in the car downstairs, frozen in an ice coffin. I'll bring her with me to the test. Lin Yi said. The only problem is, do I have the right to participate in the test? You all have an invitation, but I don't. The invitation is just a notice, you don't have to have one. Yu Bing shook his head and explained. As long as you have the right. Freelancers who hear about this can join the test as well. There's no special requirement for that. The main purpose of the Ice Palace's test is for the Ice Palace to earn money, and also to get more outer disciples. Earn money? Lin Yi asked. To participate in the Ice Palace's trial, you need to pay a deposit of 100 million, and the deposit is non-refundable. Think about it, there are hundreds of people participating in the Ice Palace's trial. How much money would the Ice Palace earn? Yu Bing smiled. An ancient sect like the Ice Palace doesn't have the time to run a business, but how can they support such a huge business without money? So they use this method to earn money and become an outer disciple. For people like us, it might seem like a huge benefit, but it's actually just doing odd jobs in the Ice Palace. The core disciples of the Ice Palace have to focus on training, so they don't have time to do chores like boiling water, cooking, and sweeping the floor. It's basically free labor. All they need to do is give them some pointers and give them some pills for training. Ha! So this Ice Palace really has it all planned out. Lin Yi nodded. But there's nothing we can do about this. They don't force people to join the test, and it's just like that. Yu Bing said, you need to pay 100 million deposit if you want to join the test. Is that a problem? I'll think of something for you if there is. That's not a problem. Lin Yi shook his head. Now that Peng Zhan had passed his predicament, it wouldn't be hard to borrow 100 million from him. If not, there were still House Lu and House Wu who were close to him. Alright, one more thing, I think my cousin Yushan will be in a team with those two from House Xiao, fighting the outsiders together. Should we be in a team then? Yu Bing invited Lin Yi. No problem. Lin Yi nodded, but we're a bit weaker than them. Your brother Yushan is a mystic mid-phase peak, right? How do you know? Yu Bing was surprised. He didn't think that Lin Yi would know Yushan's strength, even able to tell that he was close to mystic mid-phase peak. After all, Yushan was only mystic mid-phase, not mystic mid-phase peak yet. I can tell. Lin Yi smiled. You're mystic mid-phase peak and I'm mystic mid-phase peak as well. I've been showing signs of breaking through these few days, but I haven't. Plus, the two from House Xiao are mystic mid-phase peak and mystic late phase. If we were to face each other in the test, we'd be at a disadvantage. I didn't think you'd know the opponent's strength so well, and with such precision. Yu Bing was pleasantly surprised. He knew House Xiao's Zhao Qikuan's strength, but he didn't know the strength of that Zhao Qijiu beside him. He was just about to ask around when Lin Yi found out about it first. School Beauty's Personal Expert 147. Chapter 1474. Chapter 1472. Xiao Ning's secret. But Zhao Qikuan's follower is actually a mystic late phase. That's not good. Yushan won't let go of any chance to humiliate me. How about this, you go alone? Since your goal is only the fruit, you don't need to get involved with me. I don't want to drag you into this. Yu Bing's heart started pounding after hearing Zhao Qijiu's strength. After all, the difference between him and Lin Yi was too big. Even if Lin Yi really did break through to mystic late phase, he just broken through. Compared to someone who'd already broken through, they were at a disadvantage. Plus there was Yushan, a mystic mid-phase peak. If he were to face Zhao Qikuan, and Lin Yi were to face Zhao Qijiu, with Yushan ambushing them from the side, who could handle that? Ha! But don't worry, I have a trump card. Lin Yi said. Even if it's an earth class, I have a chance to heavily injure him, so don't talk about this anymore. Since we're fated to meet again, we'll still be a team. Are you serious? You can heavily injure an earth class? Yu Bing's eyes went wide. Fuck. Aren't you a little too strong? No wonder Ning likes you, you're a super scion. Let's not talk about that. Lin Yi interrupted Yu Bing. Some things were in the past and it wasn't easy to start over again. Although it wasn't that easy to forget, and it was even more profound, Lin Yi didn't have the courage to bring it up again. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had found his own happiness. Tang Yun and Xiao Xiao, if he could stay with them for the rest of his life, that would be a kind of happiness. As for other things, there was no need to force it. Between him and the hidden House Yu, there seemed to be enmity from the beginning, and it was impossible to mediate until now, unless Yu Ning's father could let go of the hatred of the secular House Yu and accept Lin Yi. But someone as proud as Lin Yi, even if he went to the hidden House Yu, he might not get along well. This was what Yu Ning wanted. Lin Yi couldn't give it in the past and he still couldn't give it now. The two of them had grown up in different environments, and Yu Xiaochen wasn't a reasonable person either. This meant that the two of them wouldn't end up together. So instead of being disappointed, it was better to have nothing. You don't like Ning? Yu Bing didn't end the topic. So what if I like it? So what if I don't? Lin Yi asked back. If you like it, I can help, Yu Bing said. Help? You're too naive. Lin smiled bitterly. Do you think there's a chance of resolving the conflict between me and House Yu? At least you didn't offend the hidden House Yu. Yu Bing said sincerely, if you really want to, I can really work hard. Actually, there are some things that you don't know, but I can feel it from what your father told me. I can also see some problems. Lin sighed, I don't know if you've noticed it, but your House Yu values her more than you do. Yu Bing didn't want to admit it, but he had to admit that Lin Yi's words had hit the nail on the head. Yes, in House Yu Yuning's position, she was more important than him, a direct descendant. The old ancestor of House Yu loved Yuning to an extent that it was even more than normal doting. The way his grandfather looked at Yuning was like he saw the future of House Yu, the glory of House Yu. But when he looked at him and Yushan, he wouldn't look at Yushan like that, only sternness. I don't know what secret she has, but I feel that she... Before Lin Yi could finish, Yu Bing subconsciously covered Lin Yi's mouth. Shush! Yu Bing jumped in fright, but then he remembered that they were in an inn, not House Yu. This was an inn, not House Yu. He couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. I'm sorry, it's just a reflex. What's wrong? Lin Yi was confused by Yu Bing's actions. Before, I asked my father curiously, just like you, about Ning, but he told me sternly that I'm not allowed to ask or talk about it anymore. Yuning is a taboo in House Yu, no one dares to talk about it. Yu Bing shrugged. I subconsciously thought that we were at House Yu, so I was afraid that someone might hear us. So that's how it is. Lin Yi sighed, so, there are some things that we shouldn't think about. But you're not weak now, Yu Bing said. You've actually become a mystic mid-phase peak and you're about to break through to the late phase. I really didn't expect that. Our house has treasures that can be used to make training pills, but you probably don't have them. I have my own way of training, Lin Yi said. Strength isn't the key is that I just offended your house. Yu Bing paused. This is a qi gathering pill. I got it from someone called Elder Yu. Lin Yi took out a small bottle and put it in front of Yu Bing. Qi gathering pill. Yu Bing's eyes were wide open as he stood up with a whoosh, looking at the bottle in disbelief. Lin Yi's move had shocked him to the point where he couldn't believe it. It wasn't just because it was a qi gathering pill, but also because he got it from Elder Yu. Yu Bing's face changed. Naturally, he knew what a qi gathering pill was, and he knew that House Yu had sent Yu Huashing to steal it from the tomb, but he didn't think that the reason why Huashing couldn't find the pill was because it was stolen by Lin Yi. Yu Bing's first thought wasn't on how to get the pill back. Although his father needed it, Yu Bing knew that this was the rule of the martial world. This pill didn't belong to Yu Huashing, it belonged to the tomb master, and so it belonged to whoever got it first. It didn't belong to anyone, so there was no way to get it back. What Yu Bing thought of was that Lin Yi trusted him the most. This was a secret that involved House Yu, and Lin Yi was able to tell him so directly. This touched Yu Bing a little. Otherwise, Lin Yi could have just not told him this, and he wouldn't have known. Do you think that the hatred between us can be resolved? Lin Yi looked at Yu Bing's expression and felt gratified. There was no anger, no greed, only shock and helplessness. Lin Yi wasn't wrong about him. Lin Yi wanted to test Yu Bing's character and thought, even if Lin Yi didn't take it out now, if they really couldn't find the fruit in the test, then this qi gathering pill would become the pill Lin Yi used to exchange for the fruit with the Ice Palace. Chapter 147, School Beauty's Personal Expert. Chapter 1475. Lin Yi couldn't think of anything else he had that could tempt the Ice Palace. One fruit could be bought with money, but the Ice Palace probably wouldn't sell it to Lin Yi, and he'd have to use a qi gathering pill to exchange for one. At that time, Yu Bing would see the qi gathering pill as well, and he'd think of what happened to Elder Yu. So instead of letting him suspect, he might as well tell the truth. Of course, Lin Yi didn't know that Elder Yu hid the fact that the pill was stolen from him, and lied that he didn't find it. It's not us, it's you and my father. But it belongs to whoever got it. There's no grudge, Yu Bing said. But you're quite strong. I finally understand why you said you had the confidence to take on an Earth class. Too bad my father was just one step away from breaking through to Sky class. I was planning to use this pill to exchange for the fruit, so I'm sorry I can't give it to you. I know how important this is to your family, but I need it too. Lin Yi said. But I left one for Elder Yu, isn't it for your father? There's someone from House Yu who's breaking through to Sky Class? What? You left one for him? Yu Bing paused. You're saying that Elder Yu has another chi gathering pill with him? Yeah, why you didn't know? Linny looked at Yu Bing strangely. Didn't he tell you? No. Yu Bing took a deep breath, a dark look flashing across his face. It seems like the practitioners from the Common World House Yu are not on the same side as us. He's been hiding the pill. Common House Yu? You mean Elder Yu is from the Common House Yu? Could it be Yu Shuixing's big brother? That Earth class? Linny blinked. Yes, it's him. Yu Bing laughed coldly. This time you don't have to worry. If Yu Huixing really took the pill for himself, then we, the Hidden House Yu, wouldn't need to support the Common House Yu anymore, and the conflict between you and the Hidden House Yu would be resolved. The problem isn't this, it's Xiao Ning herself. Linny didn't want to mention this name, but since things had reached this point, he couldn't avoid it. Your family's expectations of her are too high, and your expectations of me are too low. I don't know if all this can be changed in the future, but at least not now, and I already have a girlfriend. You already have a girlfriend? Yu Bing was shocked. He only paid attention to Lin Yi's recent actions in Songshan, making enemies with so many powerhouses, but he didn't really care about Lin Yi's private life. So when Lin Yi brought it up, Yu Bing's heart sank. He didn't know if his sister would be able to accept this news. But Yu Bing couldn't blame Lin Yi for anything. After all, Lin Yi didn't give his sister any promises back then. It was all her wishful thinking. At first, Yu Bing even thought that his sister had grown up in the family and hadn't seen much of the world. So when she saw Lin Yi for the first time, she would fall for him. But after returning to the family for a while or meeting other outstanding men, she would forget about Lin Yi. But that wasn't the case. As he interacted with Lin Yi more, Yu Bing realized how amazing Lin Yi was. Especially this time, Yu Bing really admired Lin Yi. He actually dared to do anything, snatching food from the tiger's mouth from an Earth class. Even with Yu Bing's background, he wouldn't dare to do something like this. But Lin Yi did it, and he succeeded. He couldn't compare to this level of skill. Yes, I have. Lin Yi nodded. And there's two. Lin Yi didn't try to hide it. His goal was to tell Yu Ning through Yu Bing's mouth. He wanted her to know that not only did he have a girlfriend, but he was also a playboy. People like her would definitely give up. But Lin Yi's goal didn't seem to be achieved. Not only that, but it also made Yu Bing feel relieved. He thought that Lin Yi was a rigid person, but now he realized that he wasn't. Since Lin Yi had two girlfriends, he didn't need his sister. Although it seemed like his sister was at a disadvantage, but if Lin Yi was a rigid person, then he wouldn't be able to lose even if he wanted to. The reason why Yu Bing didn't think it was a big deal was because he was born in a hidden house. In hidden houses, it was normal to have 3 or 4 wives. Unless the wife was very strong and had a strong background, such as a marriage alliance, he would only have one wife. For example, the current head of House Zhao Guangyin only had one wife, Yu Xiaojin. But although Zhao Guangyin only had one wife in name, he had an illegitimate child outside. This was no secret. Yu Bing's father also found 2 concubines, but they didn't have any children. Yu Bing was very open about this. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it. There's already 2 of them? Then one more isn't a big deal. Ning should be at ease now. She still has a chance. Yu Bing smiled. Huh. Lin Yi heard Yu Bing's words and almost fainted. He realized that his words didn't make Yu Bing give up. Instead, it strengthened his confidence. What was the philosophy of the Hidden House Yu? What's wrong? Yu Bing looked at Lin Yi and didn't understand. It's nothing. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Other than me, what other allies does House Yu have? House Yu we do. House Yu is related to the Hidden House Zhao by marriage, but the one who came this time isn't the direct grandson of House Zhao. It's Zhao Qikuan. He's with my cousin Yushan now. They're obviously forming an alliance. Yu Bing smiled bitterly. Every house has its problems, so other than you, I really don't know who else I can form an alliance with. Ha! It's nothing. Let's go out and take a look at the other houses then. Even if we can't form an alliance with them, we can at least form a good relationship with them. If we can't, then we'll let them know how strong we are and make sure they don't mess with us in the test. Lin Yi's goal was simple. If they couldn't be friends, then they shouldn't be enemies. But if there were people who were hostile, then Linny didn't mind teaching them a lesson right now, in case they caused trouble during the test. This was what Zhao Qikuan did back then, but after listening to Yu Bing's words, Linny and Zhao Qikuan couldn't be allies anymore. His instincts told him that House Zhao wouldn't make things difficult for him because of Zhao Qibing. Even if he did, it wouldn't matter. He could tell what he was planning from the way he tried to form an alliance with Yushan. Chapter 1476. But this was an internal problem between House Zhao and House Yu. It had nothing to do with Lin Yi. The day of the Ice Palace test was getting closer and closer, so there were more people coming to the inn today. When Lin Yi and Yu Bing left the inn, they saw a few more cars coming from afar, evidently heading towards the inn as well. I wonder which hidden house they are from? Lin Yi stood at the entrance of the inn and looked at the cars from afar. I'm not sure yet, but they might not all be from hidden houses. They might be from sects. Yu Bing shook his head. Yu Bing shook his head. I heard that there are people from the ancient sects participating this time. I wonder if it's true. House Yu's information network was quite fast, especially since the old head of House Yu hadn't gone into isolation yet. Yu Bing knew much more than others. At the very front of the group was a red Porsche Cayenne, evidently not from the same group as the cars behind it. This car was the fastest, and in a blink of an eye it was not far from Lin Yi. With a beautiful drift, it stopped in the parking lot. I wonder whose brother this is. Is it because he has no experience? Or is it because of his flamboyant personality? People like him make enemies easily, Yu Bing said to Lin Yi as he watched the car. They were here to participate in the test, not to act cool. If they did, they might offend other people. After all, everyone's starting point was the same, and their strength was about the same as well. No one was weaker than the other. If he had the strength, then he could be cocky for a bit, but I wonder how strong he is? Lin Yi nodded. As the two spoke, the door of the red Cayenne opened. The one who got out of the car was a cool girl wearing a tight black leather jacket. A girl. Yu Bing paused. Those who came to participate in the test were usually men, and there were very few women. After all, most of the noble houses valued men more than women. They thought that only men could inherit the family business, and it was rare to see families like House Yu who valued a girl like Yu Ning. However, this test wasn't suitable for Yu Ning, so they sent him and Yushan here. Why was she here? When Lin Yi saw the cool girl, his eyes widened. No way. She came too? Could it be that assassins could also participate in this trial? Besides, didn't they have to be mystic class masters to participate? Thinking of this, Lin Yi looked at the cool girl with some doubts. Lin Yi could be sure that there were no fluctuations of true qi in the body of the cool girl. Could it be that she was a physical expert? Yang Qiqi didn't say anything after getting off the car, not even glancing at Lin Yi as she entered the inn. Lin Yi pondered for a moment, but in the end, he did not greet her. From Lin Yi's point of view, this girl didn't even know much about martial arts. If he recruited her into his team, he wouldn't even be able to take care of her, let alone help him and Yu Bing. Therefore, it was best for Lin Yi not to provoke such a person. She looks like a pretty girl. Just a little cold. Yu Bing looked at Yang Qiqi's back as she walked into the inn. Pretty girl is real, just a little troublesome. Lin Yi shrugged and didn't deny it. You know her? Lin Yi's answer surprised Yu Bing. I don't really know her, but I've met her before. She was injured both times, and after I saved her, she said that I saw her body and wanted to kill me. You still want to kill me? Lin Yi said helplessly. Ha! Yu Bing laughed. No way? Then you have no choice but to accept her? It'll be troublesome if I accept her. Lin Yi shook his head. As they were talking, several other cars also arrived, but it was obvious that several cars seemed to be surrounding one car as they drove over. Lin Yi counted. There were 4 cars in total with different license plates, but the Hummer in the middle had a license plate from a city near Songshan. The cars stopped one after another. A few people got off from the other 3 cars and came to the side of the Hummer. They were almost fawning as they fought to open the doors of the Hummer. After a while, 2 legs came out of the Hummer. This is even more pretentious than before. Yu Bing was speechless, but this one has some strength. I know 2 of the people beside the Hummer, and they're from the hidden house. It's an expert from the hidden house of Zhuang. To be able to make them bow and scrape like this, this person shouldn't be from a hidden house or a normal sect. If I'm not wrong, this person should be from an ancient sect. Ancient sects are here too. Linny was surprised, but isn't the Ice Palace an ancient sect too? Why are there people from other ancient sects here? As far as I know, ancient sects can join each other's tests as well, but they don't have to pay a high deposit like us. They're here for friendly reasons, just to train their juniors. But the last Ice Palace test didn't have this rule. It was set by another ancient sect. It seems like the Ice Palace is copying them this time, Yu Bing explained. I see. Linny nodded. With the disciples from the ancient sects joining in, the fairness of the test will be clearly skewed. You can see it from their attitude towards the disciples from the ancient sections. Yeah. Yu Bing smiled bitterly. These ancient sect disciples might not be that strong, but they're famous, and some of the hidden house disciples like to suck up to them. This was the first time Naipeo experienced what it felt like to be a boss. He didn't think that the ancient sect's name would be this popular, especially since he was an inner disciple of the everyday and everyday sect. He was the target of all the hidden house disciples. Although the everyday and everyday sect didn't have a good reputation among the ancient sects and was called a demonic sect, their strength was tyrannical. Especially the old ancestor of the sect, he was in existence at the peak of the late phase of the heaven rank. Ordinary heaven rank powerhouses wouldn't pay attention to him. This was why Naipeo, who was only a mystic mid-phase peak, had so many hidden house disciples fawning over him. Chapter 1477. He'd once lent a helping hand to Naipeo in his family's darkest hour. Plus, Linny was Naipeo's enemy, thinking back to how he'd been stepped on by Linny back then. Naipeo felt a wave of humiliation. He was the disciple of the everyday and everyday sect, the one that the sect leader and elder valued the most, and yet he'd been stepped on by Linny, a small fry from the common world. If he didn't get his revenge, he'd feel sorry for his sect. And so he trained hard day and night, daring to try things that others didn't dare to try. Pain that others couldn't, he could. Poisonous bees, bugs, snakes, weeds. Zhang Naipeo was willing to do anything for the sake of training. The training methods of the demon sects were different from the other righteous sect. The other righteous sects used qi from heaven and earth for their own use. But the demon sects used all sorts of evil methods to convert poison and evil qi into their own strength. Naipeo's chrysanthemum arts, on the other hand, had already reached the first stage, becoming the fastest practitioner in the sect. There was actually a story behind this chrysanthemum art. It was said that it was passed down from the ancient Chiyu god, but this art was too evil and tyrannical, and was despised by the righteous sects of the Wuling world. They worked together to destroy it. Many years later, a demonic sect suddenly rose up in the martial arts world. It was the everyday and everyday sect. This sect used the chrysanthemum treasured book as their sect's treasure. The sect's mental cultivation method was also similar to the chrysanthemum treasured book. It used corpse energy, fresh blood, dead people, and poisonous substances to cultivate. A sect like this naturally would be attacked by other sects, but because of the speed and strength of the practitioners from the everyday and everyday sect, in the end they ended up in a draw. It was only a draw, and no one could do anything to the other. In this way they would mind their own business and mind their own business. But for a demon sect like the everyday and everyday sect, many ancient sects would stay away from them. But there were exceptions like the Ice Palace. The Ice Palace was a powerful existence, even among the ancient sections. The palace master of the Ice Palace was as powerful as the ancestor of the everyday and everyday sect. As for the people of the Ice Palace, they were as cold as their name suggested. They treated everyone and anything coldly. Over the years, the Ice Palace he didn't have a good relationship with the other ancient sections. However, he didn't reject the disciples of the other ancient sects who came to participate in the trial. However, the Ice Palace had the right to be indifferent. Even so, the other ancient sects had to welcome the Ice Palace with a smile. Before Naipeo came to the test, his master had already told him that he wouldn't be able to deal with the others. They could pretend to be arrogant to show off the everyday and everyday sect's superior status, but they had to welcome the people from the Ice Palace with a smile, because the Ice Palace's strength was no weaker than the everyday and everyday sect. However, although the everyday and everyday sect had the chrysanthemum treasured book, No one else cultivated it. The reason was that the chrysanthemum grimoire was too evil. If one didn't castrate oneself, one who wasn't resolute enough would be trapped by it and fall into chi deviation. Previously, there were a few disciples who had cultivated it, but all of them died from chi deviation. These disciples were the ones who the elders of the sect had thought to be the most talented, but none of them had succeeded. Only Naipeo didn't even think twice about castrating himself. He castrated himself without thinking. This was something that had never happened before. After all, which one of these disciples wasn't young? Which one of them wanted to become a eunuch? They all wanted to leave the mountain and enjoy the life of women. There was no way they'd do something as stupid as leave the ice palace. And so, even if the chrysanthemum treasured book was very strong, it was praised by the elders of the sect as being as powerful as the legendary art of dragon mastery, but very few people practiced this powerful art. The chrysanthemum grimoire had a special characteristic, and that was that it could transform all kinds of evil and poisonous things into demonic energy in one's body. It belonged to the omnipotent mental cultivation method, and was not restricted by any cultivation method. It was unlike the other mental cultivation methods that the other people in the sect practiced, which could only use poisonous grass, poisonous insects, to replenish yang or blood-sucking and so on. Naipeo, on the other hand, didn't have to do that. He used whatever he had, and even if others didn't, he could use it. This way he'd have more resources, and his training speed would naturally be faster than others. Naipeo got off the car with everyone around him, putting on his sunglasses. Master Pao is so handsome. Truly a master of the young generation. A disciple from a hidden house said. Of course Master Pao is from the ancient sect. He's as lucky as the heavens. Another disciple from a hidden house said. Humph, that girl doesn't give face to Master Pao. I think she's tired of living. The one speaking was a disciple from House Zhuang, called Zhuang Niapeo. His name was quite similar to Naipeo's, and so he used this as an excuse to get close to Naipeo. The other disciples from the hidden houses all got to know Naipeo through him. Yeah, Master Pao, do you want us to capture that girl and send her to your room tonight? Another disciple from House Zhuang said. That girl doesn't give face to Master Pao. If we don't teach her a lesson, she won't know who Master Pao is. Master Pao, that girl's pretty. Play with her for a bit. It'll be a warm-up for the test. Another disciple from a small sect said. He was thinking that once Naipeo got bored of her, he'd have a taste of her. After all, he'd have Naipeo, an ancient sect disciple, to back him up. He wasn't afraid of anything. No need, I'm not interested in her. Naipeo waved his hand nonchalantly. People like her who only know how to act cool. We'll just teach her a lesson during the test. Naipeo was speaking the truth. He really wasn't interested in Chi-Chi. He was a eunuch, what interest could he possibly have in a girl? But this was a secret. He wouldn't just tell anyone. I see. The disciple who suggested said, a little disappointed. As they spoke, Linny had a look of disbelief on his face. This was the second familiar face he'd run into after Chi-Chi. He didn't expect to run into Zhang Naipeo here. Since when did Naipeo become a practitioner? And he even became a cultivator of an ancient sect. Chapter 1478. This guy sure knows how to act. Even if the ancient sects are strong, there's no need to do this, right? Yubing frowned as he watched Naipeo's actions. Mystic mid-phase peak. Linny was shocked. Naipeo, who used to be Pinliang's follower, now had the same strength as him. Although the energy in Naipeo's body couldn't be considered pure qi, it was still very strong. Looking at it carefully, it felt familiar. Linny seemed to have seen this kind of qi before, but it wasn't complete qi. This qi could increase one's strength, but it was different from normal practitioners. Just like the energy in his own body, it was different from pure qi. But Linny was sure that the qi in Naipeo's body wasn't his own. It was a type of qi, not an all-purpose energy. As for which type it was, Linny couldn't be sure. Mystic mid-phase peak? Yubing paused. This strength isn't much in the ancient sects, right? I thought he was mystic late-phase peak. Ha! But did you know? 2 months ago he was still a normal person. Linny smiled bitterly, finding it hard to believe. What? 2 months ago he was still a normal person? Yu Bing's eyes were wide open. How is that possible? He's my classmate. Do you think it's possible? Linny was helpless as well. Ancient sects are that strong? How can they allow a normal person to increase their strength so quickly? Ancient sects, it doesn't mean that they are sects that have existed since the ancient times, but the mental cultivation methods they cultivate are mostly passed down from the ancient times. These inner force mental cultivation methods are very powerful, much more powerful than the mental cultivation methods that we, the hidden aristocratic families, and the aristocratic families cultivate. So it's not impossible, Yu Bing explained. It's just that we don't know about it. To be honest, I'm shocked as well, but remembering that he's from an ancient sect, it makes sense. At that moment, Naipeo and the others were already walking towards the entrance of the inn. Naipeo, on the other hand, saw Linny and Yu Bing at the side of the entrance. At that moment, Naipeo stopped, his eyes filled with shock as he stared at Lin Yi's face. Naturally, he ignored Yu Bing, who was beside him. Who was Yu Bing and what did he do? To Naipeo, that wasn't important. The important thing was, why was Lin Yi here? Yet, Liang Bro had said that Lin Yi was already a mystic when he visited him last time, so it was normal for him to join the Ice Palace test. As for which house or sect he belonged to, that was something Naipeo didn't need to know. He only needed to know that he was from the Everyday sect, one of the top sect in the ancient sects. It didn't matter if Lin Yi was from a hidden house or a small sect. None of that mattered, their statuses were no longer equal. Even if he killed Lin Yi in front of everyone here, no one would dare speak up for him. No one would dare stand up for him. Going against him was the same as going against the entire Everyday sect. Lin Yi's eyes met with Naipeo's. Their eyes met. There were no sparks. In Naipeo's heart he hated Lin Yi, but with his current status he had enough power to take care of Lin Yi. There was no need for him to get angry. His heart was filled with disdain. Lin Yi, on the other hand, he was shocked at how fast Naipeo leveled up, but as far as Lin Yi was concerned, he was still the same Naipeo that he could step on whenever he wanted. A mystic mid-phase peak, the same as him, it sounded like they were on par. But Lin Yi had a trump card that could even take on an Earth class. Why would he be afraid of someone on the same level as him? So in Lin Yi's heart, there wasn't even disdain, only indifference. The two didn't say anything, and just stared at each other. The people around Naipeo were confused by his actions. Master Pao, what's wrong? I saw an old acquaintance, I'll go greet him. Naipeo said faintly. Although he could have anyone around him help him against Lin Yi, he didn't do that. How could he show off his power like that? One day, he would step on Lin Yi with his own hands. This was his promise to Pinliang, and he had to keep it. Oh, Zhuang Niapeo paused. He could tell that Naipeo's words were a little weird, but he didn't know what Naipeo meant. He could only follow behind Naipeo towards Lin Yi, not daring to make a decision himself. Isn't this Lin Yi, Boss Lin? What are you doing here instead of showing off in school? Naipeo looked at Lin Yi and said mockingly, this isn't a place you should be. It's very dangerous, and you could die at any moment. Mystic mid-phase peak? Sounds strong, Lin Yi said as he looked at Naipeo. Naipeo was taken aback by the fact that Lin Yi was able to point out his strength. From Lin Yi's tone, it seemed like he didn't care. Could it be that he was an even stronger master? With that thought, Naipeo raised his guard. But that wasn't right. This Ice Palace test had a clear strength limitation. One had to be a mystic, which meant that even if you were golden class late phase peak, you couldn't participate even if you were about to break through. At the same time, even if you just broke through to Earth class a minute ago, you couldn't participate either. So, Lin Yi was definitely a mystic as well. As for what level, Naipeo didn't care because he had a trump card. As long as the opponent wasn't beyond mystic, he had confidence that he could win. Even if it was an Earth class early phase, he would be able to put up a fight. He might get injured, but it was more than enough to stay alive. This was also why Naipeo was valued by the elders of the sect. It had been many years since there was a disciple as hardworking and brave as Naipeo in the sect. Strong or not, you'll know once you try. Naipeo smiled coldly. But too bad that Liang Bro isn't here. He'd be able to see how I kill you. It'd be very satisfying. You haven't forgotten about Pinliang's revenge, have you? Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. No matter how strong you are, you're still Pinliang's dog. Dog or follower, it doesn't matter, Linny, I'll let you live today, and I'll kill you the next time I see Liang Bro. You may be spared from death today, but you can't escape punishment. Naipeo suddenly sent a palm towards Lin Yi. Chapter 1479. Lin Yi didn't think that Naipeo would make the first move here, but Lin Yi had no reason to dodge. Since that was the case, he might as well teach Naipeo a lesson. Killing Naipeo, on the other hand, was something Lin Yi didn't think about, at least not here. Lin Yi's goal here was to find the fruit for Xiao Xiao, and the Ice Palace's trial was probably the only way for him to get it. He didn't want to cause any problems before the trial started, in case the Ice Palace used him killing Zhang Naipeo as an excuse to reject him from the trial. It wouldn't be worth it if the Ice Palace used him killing Zhang Naipeo as an excuse. The current Lin Yi was no match for the Ice Palace at all. So, even if he wanted to kill Naipeo, it would be during the test, not now. Seeing Naipeo's palm coming at him, Lin Yi didn't dodge at all. He quickly channeled the art of dragon mastery and met Naipeo's palm head-on. The two palms collided and a crisp pung sound was heard. The Zhuang brothers beside Naipeo, as well as the other disciples of the hidden houses, all cheered excitedly when they saw Naipeo's attack. Master Pao is invincible. Master Pao is invincible, unparalleled. Master Pao rules the world, unifying the world. The cheers came one after another, and on Lin Yi's side, Yu Bing was frowning, worried for Lin Yi. After all, Naipeo's title as an ancient sect worried Yu Bing. The ancient sects were even stronger than the hidden houses. Even if House Yu had 2 sky-class masters, they wouldn't dare say they were on par with the ancient sections. Even the weakest ancient sects had sky-class late-phase peak masters in their ranks. It wasn't something the hidden house Yu could compare with. Hearing the cheers from Naipeo's followers, Yu Bing was even more worried. After all, these people might know Naipeo's strength. Otherwise they wouldn't have such high hopes for him. This wasn't cheering at all, it was blind flattery. Qi flowed through Lin Yi's palms towards Naipeo, but Lin Yi didn't feel Naipeo's qi retaliate at all. Naipeo didn't get blown away like the others, instead looking at her with a smile on his face. What was going on? Lin Yi vaguely felt that something was wrong. Why did his palm feel like it was hitting cotton? There was no effect at all when he used his true qi? Could it be that this Zhang Naipeo knew some sort of defensive arts? Thinking of this, Lin Yi hurriedly increased the strength of his true qi. In order to test Naipeo's strength, as well as not wanting to kill him in one hit, Lin Yi only used around 50% of his true qi. But now Lin Yi increased his true qi to 100%. Ha 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 ha. Naipeo wasn't affected at all, but started laughing instead. Lin Yi's heart sank. Strange. The kung fu of the ancient sects was indeed powerful. The people from the aristocratic families and the hidden aristocratic families. They weren't on the same level at all, just one Zhang Naipeo was already this strong. And it made Lin Yi feel like he couldn't do anything about it. Lin Yi didn't want to keep fighting, and decided to dodge first before looking for an opening. After making up his mind, Lin Yi quickly stopped his true qi and stopped his arts. He wanted to pull his palm away from Naipeo, but the next moment, something strange happened. To Lin Yi's shock, his palm seemed to have been sucked into Naipeo's palm. He couldn't pull it away no matter how hard he tried. And this wasn't the worst. What shocked Lin Yi even more was yet to come. He'd stopped channeling the art of dragon mastery, but the energy in his body was still flowing through his palms into Naipeo's body. The art of dragon mastery, on the other hand, was operating on its own. What kind of demonic practitioner's arts is this? Lin Yi looked at Naipeo, shocked. Lin Yi felt like he couldn't control this feeling. Just like that time when he transferred his true qi into Xiao Xiao, he was the one who initiated the art of dragon mastery, but then it was forced to circulate on its own, and the true qi in his body was leaking out. Ha 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 ha. This is an evil arts, called the chrysanthemum art of wasp absorption. What do you think? You've never heard of it, have you? Naipeo looked at the shocked look on Lin Yi's face and started laughing heartily. Just as he expected, all of Lin Yi's strength was absorbed by him. And this was Naipeo's trump card. Naipeo's chrysanthemum art was an all-purpose energy conversion art, able to convert all the energy in the outside world into his own demonic qi for his own use. Poisonous bees, poisonous bugs, poisonous water, all sorts of powerful poisons could be used, and the true chi that other people worked so hard to cultivate could be used by him as well. This was also the evil part of this true chi. As long as the opponent was Naipeo's level or lower, they could use it. And now Naipeo was a mystic, which meant that as long as the opponent was a golden or mystic spiritual practitioner, he could use the chrysanthemum art of wasp absorption on them. It didn't matter if they were mystic early phase or late phase peak. As long as they weren't earth class, he could kill them all. Even if it was an earth class early phase, Zhang Naipeo could risk getting injured just to absorb some of the chi from the opponent. This was what made him so powerful, and the disciples of the hidden houses and sects who followed him were all fawning over him after seeing his strength. Otherwise, even if it was an ancient sect, it would be normal for them to befriend them, but there was no need for them to fawn over him like this. On the road, a hidden house practitioner who thought he was a mystic late phase peak blocked Naipeo's path, and so Naipeo used him as a practice target without hesitation. Naipeo knew how powerful this chrysanthemum art of wasp absorption was, but this was a sect, after all, and he couldn't use a fellow disciple as a practice target. And this unlucky mystic late phase peak from a hidden house just happened to be the one who got sucked dry, losing all of his strength. Naturally, there weren't many people watching the fight between Naipeo and this mystic late phase peak, and they saw how vicious Naipeo was. Chapter 1480. And because of that, Zhang Naipeo's name started to spread, and the disciples of the other hidden houses and sects all came to get close to him. One reason was because of the halo of an ancient sect, and the other was that Naipeo himself was very strong. That was why these people were doing this. The chrysanthemum arts that Naipeo was talking about was something that Lin Yi had never heard of before. He didn't know what it was, but it was true that Naipeo could absorb his chi. Even if Lin Yi stopped his arts, it wouldn't help. The chi was still flowing out of his body. No wonder your strength grew so fast. Lin Yi's eyes flashed coldly. Naipeo was too scary, using such a dominating arts. This put a lot of pressure on Lin Yi. How should he deal with him? Lin Yi realized that he couldn't do anything to Naipeo at this point. He couldn't move his hand, and the chi in his body was draining rapidly as well. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before all his chi would go to Naipeo's side, and he'd become a normal person with no strength at all. Lin Yi had lost his strength many times before, and he wasn't afraid of it. As long as his meridians weren't broken, he had the jade space as his golden finger, and it would only take a night for him to recover his strength. But the problem was, wouldn't it be the same if he fought Naipeo again after he recovered? He'd be giving his chi to Naipeo for nothing. How's that? Shocked, right? Jealous, hateful? It's no use, I'm from an ancient sect, and you're just a normal practitioner. Naipeo said happily as he looked at Lin Yi's face. My starting point is higher than yours, and my practitioner's arts are better than yours as well. My practitioner's arts are much better than yours too, ha ha ha. Lin Yi, I suck dry a mystic late phase peak's chi on the road, and I'm already showing signs of breaking through. Maybe I'll be able to break through after I suck dry your strength. Ha 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 ha. I didn't think that I would be able to become a mystic late phase master even before the trial. Lin Yi didn't say anything as he looked at Naipeo's smug face. There was no point in saying anything at this point. Lin Yi hadn't found a way to deal with him yet. In other words, he hadn't found Naipeo's weakness yet, so there was no point in saying anything. However, Lin Yi was unwilling. It hadn't been long, and he'd already lost half of his chi. If this continued, he'd really be sucked dry by Naipeo. Lin Yi hesitated for a moment. He raised his leg and kicked at Naipeo's crotch. Lin Yi's plan was to catch Naipeo off guard, and when he was focused on absorbing his chi, he'd give him a kick that would heavily injure him and interrupt the chrysanthemum arts. Lin Yi would then use this opportunity to retract his palm. Bang! Lin Yi's leg hit Naipeo's crotch, but it didn't feel like he'd kicked anything. It didn't feel like he'd expected. You still dare to ambush me? Naipeo didn't think that Lin Yi would dare ambush him in a situation like this, but he didn't care. He laughed loudly. Perfect, thank you. One palm is too slow, I'll use your leg then. As soon as he finished his words, Lin Yi realized, to his shock, that he couldn't move his foot away from Naipeo's crotch. The qi in his body was being transferred to Naipeo from his foot. Your other body parts can absorb qi as well? Lin Yi paused. You know? But it's too late. Naipeo said, so ambushing me is useless. Ha ha ha, Lin Yi, you can only watch as you become a cripple. There's no other choice. How is it, isn't it painful? You're about to become a normal person, and all the qi you've worked so hard for will be sucked away by me, turning into the demon qi in my body for my use. Of course, Naipeo didn't know that Lin Yi would be able to recover. Normal people wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. They'd basically become a cripple. How much effort would it take to start from scratch? How many treasures and herbs would he need? Demon qi? You're not training qi? Lin Yi realized after hearing the words, it really wasn't qi in Naipeo's body. No wonder Lin Yi felt that he was different from other people. It's also a type of qi, and the strength is the same as qi as well. It's just that the element is different. Naipeo wasn't impatient at all as he explained it to Lin Yi. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi was about to become a cripple, so he might as well let him know before he died. I see, Lin Yi nodded. You're very strong. This time I admit defeat. Lin Yi had no choice but to admit defeat. He didn't want to, but it was the truth and Lin Yi couldn't deny it. After all, Lin Yi still hadn't found any weaknesses in Naipeo. Lin Yi had thought that since Naipeo's palm could absorb qi, he tried to avoid contact with it after he recovered, and attack other parts of his body instead. But that plan was ruined after Lin Yi's kick. Haha, this time? You think there's a next time? Next time it'll be your death day. Naipeo laughed. As the hidden house disciples around Naipeo cheered, Yu Bing, on the other hand, was panicking. He'd wanted to join forces with Lin Yi against Naipeo, but after hearing the conversation between Naipeo and Lin Yi, he hesitated. Naipeo was a monster, and even if Yu Bing attacked, it wouldn't be of much use. He could absorb other people's qi, and even if he went up, he wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being absorbed. So Yu Bing didn't dare attack rashly. Plus, Lin Yi had secretly hinted at him with his eyes, telling him not to act rashly. But if it really was as Naipeo said and Lin Yi was crippled and turned into a normal person, then Lin Yi wouldn't be able to participate in this test anymore. What would happen to his friends then? Wouldn't it be impossible for them to get the fruit? With that thought, Yu Bing made up his mind. If Lin Yi really was crippled and turned into a normal person, then he'd help Lin Yi find the fruit and give it to Lin Yi. Chapter 1481. Yes, Zhuang Niapeo and the other disciples from the hidden houses and sects didn't care about Lin Yi anymore. They all ran to Zhuang Naipeo's side and surrounded him, protecting him. Zhuang Naipeo sat on the ground, and a strong energy whirlpool formed around him, circling above his head. The demonic energy in his body moved the energy around him and gathered it together. It seemed like he was about to break through. As for Lin Yi, the disciples from the hidden houses and sects, as well as Zhuang Naipeo, didn't even look at him. In their eyes, Lin Yi was the same as that mystic late-phase peak master who was showing off on the road, a cripple. They didn't even want to think about this cripple, let alone look at him. Lin Yi's qi was sucked dry, and he fell to the ground. Right now, Lin Yi was even weaker than a normal person. After all, normal people still had energy in their body, but Lin Yi had none at all. How are you? Yu Bing looked at Zhuang Naipeo and the others not far away and asked Lin Yi anxiously. It's nothing. Help me back to my room. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile bitterly as he looked at Naipeo. This was the best time to deal with Zhuang Naipeo. He was in the middle of breaking through and his defense was the weakest. If he were to attack him now, he would be heavily injured. However, his followers were guarding him from the side, giving Lin Yi no chance at all. If Lin Yi was at his peak, he could use an energy bomb to kill all of them and then deal with Zhuang Naipeo. But now Lin Yi had no energy in his body at all. Where would he go to get an energy bomb? And Yu Bing wasn't a match for a group of mystic class masters. Letting him go would be suicide. So Lin Yi could only return to his room helplessly and think of a plan after recovering his strength. We're teammates, but I can't take revenge for you, Yu Bing said with a little sadness and guilt as he looked at Lin Yi. He was indignant because he was helpless. He had no way to avenge Lin Yi. He felt guilty because on one hand Lin Yi was his former teammate friend, and also his current teammate. On the other hand, it was because of Xiao Ning. Xiao Ning knew about this. If he became a normal person and lost his strength, then the gap between him and Ning and the hidden house would only get bigger and bigger. His father, Yu Xiaochen, would never allow Ning to marry a normal person. Even his grandpa wouldn't agree to it, let alone his father. It's nothing. Revenge must be taken. I'll do it myself. Lin Yi smiled and said, "You don't need to have any psychological burden. But, you look like this. How can you take revenge?" Yu Bing smiled bitterly. "Forget it. I'll help you back first." Under the disregard, Yu Bing helped Lin Yi to the entrance of the inn. This scene was witnessed by the owner of the inn, but he didn't stop them. He didn't say anything. He was from the Ice Palace as well, but the test hadn't started yet. The Ice Palace didn't need to be responsible for the safety of the participants, so he didn't need to interfere. Yu Bing helped Lin Yi back to his room and said hurriedly, "What do I do? What should I do now? Do you need any treasures? Tell me, I have a certain status in House Yu. Plus Xiao Ning, as long as House Yu has what you want, I can get it for you." "No need." Lin Yi smiled gratefully. "Why do you need to go through so much trouble? You can go back, I'll rest for a bit." Then, "Alright. Don't worry too much, you don't have your strength anymore. We can train again. With me and Xiao Ning supporting you secretly, you'll have a lot of treasures to make." Yu Bing consoled. He thought that Lin Yi was just comforting him after all. He had lost all his strength, and to recover it would be as hard as reaching the heavens. This was the strength he had accumulated since he was young. It wasn't something that could be achieved in a day. But Lin Yi wasn't in a good mood right now, so he didn't want to talk too much. He needed some peace and quiet. "Thank you." Lin Yi nodded to Yu Bing with a smile. After Yu Bing left, Lin Yi quickly entered the Jade Space and started channeling the art of dragon mastery. The energy in the Jade Space surged into Lin Yi's body like crazy. Lin Yi was already used to this. As long as his meridians weren't damaged, recovering his strength and energy was only a matter of time. In Yu Bing's room, Yu Bing was holding the satellite phone in his hand with a bitter face. He didn't know if he should tell his sister about Lin Yi's injury, but if he didn't tell her, then he wouldn't be able to continue with his plan. He had to work with his sister, otherwise with his position in House Yu, he wouldn't be able to get that many treasures. With that thought, Yu Bing picked up the phone and called his sister's number. He didn't call the house phone, but the cell phone, afraid that someone would hear the call. "Hello? Big brother?" Yu Ning picked up her phone strangely. When her brother participated in the trial, he would usually call home to report that he was safe and sound. Finally, he would look for her to say a few words. Why did he directly call her today? According to his calculations, today should be the day her brother arrived at Snowtown. Shouldn't he call home to report that he was safe? In fact, Yu Bing did want to call home to report that he was safe, but he met Lin Yi first, so he didn't have the time to do so. Now that something like this happened to Lin Yi, how could Yu Bing be in the mood to report that he was safe? He had to call his sister quickly to discuss a plan. If he could get his hands on some of the house's soul-gathering pills, that would be the best. The so-called soul-gathering pill was similar to the chi-gathering pill, but it was much less effective. The soul-gathering pill was a spiritual medicine for those below the mystic class to quickly increase their strength, but it wasn't that useful once they reached the mystic class. Back then, Yu Bing had to use a lot of soul-gathering pills to break through to the mystic class, but although it was a lower level than the chi-gathering pill, it was still expensive to make. Two of the family's medicine masters spent a lot of effort to make it. To be continued. High-speed text. Chapter 1482. In addition, the success rate was extremely low. The reason why it was called a pill was because these two people were only medicine masters, not alchemists. They could only mix herbs into pills, but they couldn't make them into pills. "It's me." Yu Bing smiled bitterly. Originally, he was going to tell Yu Ning the good news because he saw Lin Yi today. He believed that Yu Ning would be very happy after hearing the news, but now that the good news had turned into bad news, it was hard for him to explain it to his sister. After all, Lin Yi was injured in front of him, but he couldn't do anything. What's wrong, big brother? From your voice you don't sound too happy? Yuning asked curiously. There's bad news. Sis, after I finish you have to hold on. Yubing hesitated. What news? Why are you saying it so scary? Big brother, what happened? After Yuning heard it, her heart was nervous for no reason. Did you encounter any trouble? It's not me. Sis, do you know who I met in the inn in Snowtown? Yubing smiled bitterly. Who? Yuning paused and asked. Linny. Yubing said. What? Did you see him? Yuning was surprised and happy you met him. He also went to participate in the test. No, you told me before there was bad news. Is it about him? Yuning's heart subconsciously trembled. Could it be that something really happened to him? Yes. Yubing had called to tell Yuning the truth, so instead of stuttering, he might as well tell her the truth, and so he paused for a moment. After organizing his words, he told the whole story in detail to Yuning. What? He lost all his strength. The opponent is a disciple of an ancient sect. Yuning was shocked after listening. She didn't blame her brother, because as a member of the hidden house she knew what it meant to be an ancient sect. She also knew that if the opponent was as strong as her brother said, then even if her brother took action it would be useless. In this situation, he chose to endure it for now. It was right. After all, this wasn't the time to be impulsive. Yet, I'm really sorry, little sister. I can't do anything. Yubing smiled bitterly. I carry father's hope as well as House Yu's hope. I can't lose all my strength. I understand, but Yuning shook her head. She understood what her brother was thinking and naturally wouldn't say anything about it. When I heard that he was already a mystic mid-phase peak, I was very happy. But in the blink of an eye, he lost all his strength. This is also the reason why I called you. I wanted to hide it from you, not letting you know. I didn't want you to be sad. Yubing said. I need your help. If I want Linny to recover his strength, I need a large amount of cultivation elixirs, such as spirit gathering pills. House you can provide it, but the resources I can get are limited. You'll have to do the rest. But I'm not a cultivator. I've never asked for things like elixirs. Yuning paused. She felt that what Yubing said was feasible. If she could help Linny recover his strength, she was willing to do anything. She would never forget what had happened on that Valentine's Day night. Her heart was tied to Linny. However, Yuning wasn't an impulsive person. She knew her own situation. If she went to her house and asked for elixirs, the house would definitely be suspicious. Then the family would definitely be suspicious, so he had to be skillful, so we need to think of a way. But this happened so suddenly, I don't have any good ideas yet. Yubing smiled bitterly. I'm just telling you first, you should think about it too. Alright, I'll think about it later. Yuning didn't dare to neglect Lin Yi's situation. She quickly nodded. Alright, that's all for now. Don't let others know. I'll call home now to tell them that I'm safe. Yubing sighed. Although he felt bad, he still had to call home to tell them that he was safe. Brother. Yuning hesitated. What's wrong? Is there anything else? Yubing was about to hang up when he heard Yuning calling him. Can I talk to him? Yuning mustered up her courage and asked. Tomorrow. I'll try to talk to him. Right now he's resting in his room. I think he doesn't want others to know about this, so let's not disturb him. Yubing said. That's good too. Yuning nodded. She understood Lin Yi's current mood. No matter who it was, they would be unhappy if they lost their strength. But brother, help me tell him that no matter what, I will help him. Please believe me, I can do it. Even if I can't do it now. When I will definitely be able to help him. Tell him not to give up on himself. Yuning was so excited that she almost said that she could inherit the cultivation from the ancient ruins. However, this was a top secret in House Yu. Other than Yuning, only the old ancestor and Yu Shaochen knew about it. Even Yu Yi didn't know much about it. I understand. Yubing didn't ask anymore. He knew that his sister had a big secret. A secret that could revitalize House Yu. But since his father didn't want him to know, he didn't need to ask. That would only make things difficult for his sister. After all, this wasn't as simple as a brother-sister relationship. It was a violation of House Yu's rules. Yubing knew the severity of this. After calling his family to let them know that he was safe, Yubing didn't have the mood to talk to other people anymore. He laid on his bed and went to bed early. He couldn't sleep and his mind was a mess, but he didn't want to do anything else. Zhao Qikuan, Zhao Qizhou, and Yushan had just finished eating and were walking back to the inn. It was already 3 in the morning, and they were clearly drinking to their heart's content. They were all very happy. However, the 3 of them were half a step slower. In front of them there was another person, an ally that they had just recruited. But this ally's identity was definitely not simple. Otherwise, even Yushan, who came from the head of the hidden houses, wouldn't be so respectful. Nitian bro, with you joining us, our team will definitely get a heaven-defying result in this test. Zhao Qikuan was very excited. He actually had a connection with an ancient noble house. The benefits of this was self-explanatory. To be continued. High-speed text. Chapter 1483. One had to know that the ancient noble houses and ancient sects had the same status. They were one level higher than the hidden houses and normal sects. And this young man in front of him was from the ancient noble house Feng Nitian. His name was domineering, but he had the right to be domineering. With him in the team, Qikuan believed that he and Yushan would be able to pass the Ice Palace test without a hitch. You can't say that. There are other ancient sects and ancient noble houses participating in the test. I'm not the only one. Nitian might have said that, but he didn't look humble at all. It was obvious that he had accepted Yushan's words. But we're all at the same level as the ancient, we'll give each other some face. That's right, that's right. Not to be outdone, Yushan said. Big Bro Nitian's face is definitely bigger than ours. To have Big Bro Nitian join our team is the honor of 3 lifetimes. This time, if anyone doesn't like it, Nitian bro will kill them with his arts. Qikuan couldn't help but admire the words arts. Arts that defied the heavens. This was something that defied the heavens. Before, Feng Nitian had only shown a little of his skills, and it was enough to make Qikuan, Qizhou, and Yushan submit to him. Even if Nitian was from the ancient Feng house, Qikuan and the others wouldn't need to be so polite to him. They weren't on the same level, and it was fine to be respectful, but there was no need to be too polite. Nitian was just a disciple here to participate in the test. He wouldn't be able to do anything for their families, so they were completely shocked by his performance. The level of the ancient sects and ancient aristocratic families was indeed very powerful. Hidden noble houses. They weren't even on the same level. Arts that defied the heavens were indeed very strong. Feng Nitian's arts were very strange. He could create a small field around him, and the people in this field wouldn't be able to move at all. Although the area was small, and the time limit was very short, Feng Nitian couldn't move at all. Nitian was at the 3rd level, and he could only restrict people's movements for around 3 minutes, and the effective range was only around 3 meters, but that was more than enough. Think about it, even a super master wouldn't be able to move. Being locked in place and unable to move, wasn't that equivalent to sitting on the ground and waiting for death? This meant that Feng Nitian's arts were extremely powerful. Of course, in the Feng clan, besides the Feng clan's ancestor, only he had successfully cultivated this miraculous mental cultivation method. There were many requirements for cultivating this mental cultivation method. It was not something that ordinary people could achieve. As a result, Feng Nitian was highly regarded in the family. Other than training, he also wanted to make a name for himself. If he passed the test, his name would be even more famous in the house. In order to make preparations for him to smoothly become the young patriarch. After Nitian became the young master, the position of the head of the house would naturally fall into his father's hands. His uncle, who had the advantage now, would be kicked out of the competition. Of course, even if Feng Nitian didn't participate in this test, he would still be able to participate because of the Feng old ancestors' love for him. With his own cultivation, he could still become the head of the house, but he wouldn't have any outstanding achievements. The process would be slow, and Feng Nitian didn't want to wait any longer. The more he looked at his uncle and his honest brother, the more he didn't like them. Therefore, as long as he could successfully pass this trial and become one of the top 3, He would be able to win some heavenly treasures for his family. Although the ancient Feng family didn't lack heavenly treasures, what he wanted was the honor, not the items. As for taking in a few followers to run errands for him, Feng Nitian, naturally, didn't mind sharing some of the merits with them. As far as Feng Nitian was concerned, as long as he used his heaven-defying arts on the test field, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted? He would be able to hurt them if he wanted to. He would be able to steal their points if he wanted to. Getting the first place in the test was as easy as flipping his hand. Every time I use the heaven-defying arts, it consumes a large amount of qi. I can't use it as I please, I can only use it 3 to 5 times. Feng Nitian waved his hand. So, don't just sit around and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. In fact, with his current strength he could only use it 3 times at most. 5 times was basically impossible, but Feng Nitian was just bragging. That's more than enough. We'll see who gets the most points then, and we'll use it if we can't win. Nitian bro, please go out and use your heaven-defying arts against him. Yushan said. That works too, it's also a form of training for you guys. Otherwise, I'll just attack and there'll be no point in the test anymore. Feng Nitian said, acting cool. Of course. Chikuan and Yushan nodded. The 4 returned to the inn and saw 6 people sitting in front of the door. 5 of them were surrounding one person, as if they were meditating. What are they doing? Feng Nitian frowned and pointed at Zhang Naipeo. I don't know, Nitian bro, I'll go ask? Yushan asked. Alright, go ahead and ask. Feng Nitian nodded. The qi here is thicker than other places, but it's not like they're training out in the open. Isn't it the same in the inn? Oh, you guys, what are you doing? With Feng Nitian's support, Yushan's arrogance was revealed, and he wasn't as restrained as before. Zhuang Nipao and the others were focused on guarding when someone walked over and shouted, and they jumped up in fright. Although they were furious, they didn't want to disturb Master Pao's training, so they didn't say anything. Fuck, I'm talking to you guys, are you deaf? Can't you hear me? Yushan saw that these people were ignoring him and was pissed. Open your dog eyes and look. This is Nitian bro from the ancient noble house Feng. Why aren't you guys bowing to him? Seeing how arrogant this person was, Zhuang Nipao and Zhuang Niaoqiang couldn't sit still anymore. They wanted to stand up and teach this guy a lesson, but before they could stand up, they heard what he said. What? Someone from the ancient Feng family? Zhuang Nipao was about to stand up and beat him up, but he quickly stood up and explained, I'm sorry, the disciple of the ancient sect everyday sect, Master Pao, is training here, and we're here to guard him. Although they had Zhang Naipeo's support, they couldn't afford to offend an ancient noble house. To be continued. High-speed text. Chapter 1484. School Beauty's Personal Expert 1482. School Beauty's Personal Expert Chapter 1482 Late Phase Mystic Class Late Phase. If it was a disciple from a normal hidden family, they would not have given a damn about it. However, an ancient family was different. They were as powerful as an ancient sect. High-quality text first, all above. They couldn't be disrespected. What? There's someone from an ancient sect training here? Feng Nitian was taken aback as well. He didn't know that the person in the middle was from an ancient sect, but now that he knew, naturally he wouldn't disturb him anymore. His purpose for coming out this time was to get on the good side of the disciples from other ancient sects and ancient houses, so that he could compete for the position of the head of his house in the future. So, after Feng Nitian heard that there was someone from an ancient sect training here, he quickly said, Then I'm sorry for disturbing you. When this brother is done with his training, please tell him that Feng Nitian of the ancient house Feng will come to him personally to apologize. No problem, Nitian bro. Zhuang Niapeo quickly nodded. Although this person said that he would come and apologize, it was just polite words. Zhuang Niapeo still knew how to differentiate between good and bad. What's going on? Why is he training here? Feng Nitian was a bit weird, an ancient sect shouldn't lack places to train. Why would he suddenly train in front of an inn in the middle of the night? Zhuang Niapeo didn't dare to hide anything and told him everything that happened. And when Lin Yi's name was mentioned, Zhao Qikuan naturally heard it as Ling Yi. The two names were very similar, So he thought that Zhuang Niapeo couldn't pronounce the words properly. What? Lingyi is crippled? Zhao Qikuan froze, thinking that it was a waste to try and recruit him. If he knew that he had an ancient sect as his enemy, he wouldn't have wasted his effort. However, when Yushan heard the news, high-quality text first, all in percent, this time his big brother was really happy. The ally he just recruited was crippled. Haha, he must be very happy, right? Yu Bing. Let's see how you're going to compete with me this time. I have Feng Nitian of the ancient house Feng as my support. What do you have? Your only ally is crippled. Just wait to be eliminated this time. 5 years later, when I return from my studies, the future head of house you will be me. You're nothing in front of me. I see. Nitian nodded. He didn't show it on the surface, but he was incomparably shocked in his heart. He originally thought that his mental cultivation method was heaven-defying enough, but he didn't expect that the person in front of him was even more heaven-defying than him, to actually be able to absorb the true chi of others. This was simply too terrifying, right? Of course, Niapeo was very strong in the eyes of Qikuan and the others as well. Feng Nitian's kung fu was just as strong, and both of them were from the ancient world. They couldn't please both of them at the same time, and now that they had a good relationship with Feng Nitian, Zhang Niapeo couldn't be fawning on him anymore. Then I won't disturb Brother Niapeo's training any longer. And Itian will take his leave. Nitian said politely and left with Qikuan and Yushan, heading towards the inn 5 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly, the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the air above the inn became denser and denser. Any experienced cultivator would know that this was a sign that someone was about to break through. He couldn't sense it from far away, but he could still clearly sense it if it was close by. I'm about to break through. Everyone stay alert. Zhuang Niapeo yelled to the others who were protecting Niapeo. Yes. Everyone quickly answered and prepared for battle. Inside the inn in Nitian's room, Qikuan and Yushan were talking to him when Nitian suddenly stopped and walked to the window. The one down there. Is he about to break through? After Nitian finished his sentence, Nitian's eyes widened. Only then did Qikuan and Yushan feel that the energy around them had thickened. They didn't notice it before, but they were disciples of a hidden noble house, and they were weaker than Nitian, who came from an ancient noble house. They weren't as sensitive as him. Boom dash, Nitian's words had just landed when the energy of heaven and earth gathered together in the square below the inn before exploding and dispersing rapidly. Mystic late phase. He actually broke through to mystic late phase. What an overbearing art. Nitian sighed. Yeah, but Brother Nitian, you're not bad yourself. High quality text first, all in percent, haha, mystic late phase, that's just the same level as me, it's nothing. Nitian waved his hand. Let's continue our conversation. What else do you guys want to know about the ancient noble houses? Nitian had been answering Qikuan and Yushan's questions, teaching them about the ancient sects and ancient noble houses. Of course, what Nitian said wasn't any secret. It was something everyone in the ancient world knew. But the disciples of the hidden noble houses didn't know much about it. So, Nitian didn't mind showing off in front of them to raise his status. However, after Zhang Niapeo broke through, the owner of the inn squinted his eyes and looked outside the inn. He raised his head and looked upstairs, a flash of surprise in his eyes as he mumbled to himself, someone broke through upstairs? Could it be that person? It seems like this test is full of talents. With that, the owner's eyes returned to their previous calmness, and he didn't say anything else. Linny let out a breath of turbid air. A smile on his face. I finally broke through. Zhang Niapeo, I really have to thank you, you've broken through too. But without you, I wouldn't have the chance to break through. In this period of time, Linny had been showing signs of breaking through to mystic late phase, but he lacked a chance, and with this chance today, Linny broke through. This was an unexpected reward for Linny. Linny stretched lazily, feeling an indescribable sense of satisfaction. Leveling up naturally was much more comfortable than using compressed energy to break through. At least his clothes weren't destroyed, and it wasn't that painful when he broke through. Oink oink. Skybolt Pig looked at Linny enviously. This little thing couldn't understand how Linny, who looked like he didn't have any strength at all, became stronger in such a short amount of time. What was going on? Ha! Little guy, you want to level up too? Linny broke through to mystic late phase, and his mood was very good. Naturally, his attitude towards Skybolt Pig got better as well. Oink oink. Skybolt Pig quickly nodded. Alright. Linny agreed quickly. I'll use this breakthrough to turn you into a mystic high-class pig. Oink oink. Skybolt Pig heard Linny's words and started dancing in excitement. But I'll leave the task of finding the fire spirit's fruit to you. You'll have to work hard. Linny reminded. To be continued. School Beauty's Personal Expert 1482. School Beauty's Personal Expert Chapter 1482. Mystic Late Phase Update complete. Chapter 1485. Campus Belle's Personal Expert 1483. Campus Belle's Personal Expert Chapter 1483. School Beauty's Personal Master Chapter 1483. Slapping his face oink. Skybolt Pig nodded in agreement. Come on then, little thing. Linny picked up Skybolt Pig and entered the jade space again. He could feel that Skybolt Pig didn't have any practitioner's arts. The energy in his body was accumulated from treasures, very similar to Linny's all-purpose energy. After Linny's energy entered Skybolt Pig's body, it merged perfectly with the energy from before. It seemed like the pure chi in a spirit beast's body was the same as his own energy. No wonder General Weiwu could level up. Healing spirit beasts were similar to other spirit beasts, except that they had the natural ability to transfer all-purpose energy to others. General Weiwu happened to have this ability, and that was why Elder Yu treated it as a healing spirit beast. Other spirit beasts had different abilities, but the all-purpose energy in their body was the same. It was just that they didn't know how to transfer it. Although this energy was all-purpose, it couldn't be transferred to others before it was transferred. Even if it was all-purpose, it wouldn't help. So only people like Linny who practiced all-purpose energy could use it. This was one of the weaknesses of spirit beasts. When Skybolt Pig broke through to the early phase of Mystic, the sky was already bright. Linny patted the little guy in front of him lightly and smiled. Alright, little guy, hide yourself, I'm going to see my old friend. You Bing probably didn't sleep well the whole night, right? With that thought, Linny felt touched. Although he didn't get along with the common House Yu and some people in the hidden House Yu, his friendship with Yu Bing was real. But the friendship between him and Yu Bing was real. It didn't matter if it was because of Yu Ning or not. Yu Bing treated him as a friend, and so he was very grateful. If there was a chance, Linny would definitely repay him, but Yu Bing didn't need anything at the moment. Skybolt Pig had just broken through, and was running around the house excitedly when he heard Lin Yi's words. Reluctantly, he found a place to hide. Before the trial began, Lin Yi did not plan to let too many people know about the existence of the Skybolt Pig, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble. Once the trial began, everyone was destined to become enemies. Lin Yi wasn't afraid of others robbing it. The worst that could happen was a fight. However, he believed that if these people couldn't see through the secret of the Skybolt Pig, and just treated it as an ordinary profound rank pet with no attack power, no one would rob it. This kind of thing was useless. In the ancient sects, there were many people who raised some spirit beasts as pets. However, although these spirit beasts were powerful, their combat power was very weak. They would not cause much harm to humans. Lin Yi pushed the door open and walked out of the bedroom to see Zhao Qikuan, Zhao Qijiu, and two people he didn't know. One of them looked similar to Yu Bing, so he should be Yushan from House Yu. As for the other person, Lin Yi had never seen him before, but he felt like he had seen him before. He couldn't tell who he looked like. Isn't this Brother Ling? How are you? Are you alright? I heard that you were injured yesterday, so I wanted to go see you, but I didn't want to disturb you. Are you alright? Zhao Qikuan pretended to greet Lin Yi. Zhao Qikuan was obviously more shrewd than Yushan. He already knew that Lin Yi couldn't be roped in, and Lin Yi was already crippled. But after all, they had drunk together before, so he still pretended to comfort him. Thank you for your concern, Brother Zhao. I'm fine. Lin Yi smiled and nodded at this Qikuan. Towards this Zhao Qikuan, Lin Yi didn't have much of a bad impression of him. This person was smooth, but he was easier to get along with than Qibing. His instincts told him that they were enemies just like Yu Bing and Yushan. Nothing? He's probably crippled and is about to say goodbye to my brother? Yushan said in a strange tone. But that big brother of mine sure is unlucky. He just found an ally but he became a cripple. How sad, how sad. Yushan used to be a reserved person, but after suddenly becoming Nitian's boss, his ego swelled up, and he started to do some crazy things. Gotcha. The door next to Lin Yi's was pushed open, and Yubing glared at Yushan. Yushan, what did you say? Say it again. What? Did I say something wrong? Did I step on your sore spot? You couldn't take it anymore and jumped out? Yushan curled his lips as he looked at Yubing. Yushan, you're getting more and more out of hand. Yubing was furious. You've been picking on me all the time and I've tolerated it. But you shouldn't treat other people's pain like a joke. Who do you think you are? Nitian was getting impatient after hearing Yubing's nagging. He wanted to go out to eat but he was delayed here. Naturally, he wasn't happy about it. Who are you? This is House Yu's business, you have no right to butt in. Yubing didn't expect someone else to help Yushan. No right to butt in? Nitian raised his hands and made a weird hand sign in the air. He smiled coldly. Ignorant trash, it's as easy as flipping my hand to kill you. With that, Nitian raised his right hand and slapped Yubing across the face with a loud slap. He then slapped the other side of Yubing's face with another slap. Yubing was slapped across the other side of his face. Yubing, on the other hand, just stood there not moving at all. It was as if he was waiting to be slapped. He didn't do anything at all. Lin Yi was quite far away, but he could see Yubing's expression. Yubing's face was filled with rage, but he didn't move at all. He didn't even fight back. This surprised Lin Yi. Yubing didn't look like a coward at all. Yesterday when Zhang Naipeo was so powerful, Yubing still wanted to stand up for him, but Lin Yi stopped him with a glance. Today someone was slapping his face in front of everyone, and he didn't react at all. What was going on? After slapping Yubing twice, Nitian clapped his hands nonchalantly. He turned to Qikuan, Qijiao and Yushan. Let's go, I'm starving to death. Listening to this trash is so annoying. Lin Yi hesitated but he didn't stop him. Lin Yi didn't know what Yubing was planning. Why did Yubing choose to endure it? Was there something he didn't know? Since Yubing was enduring it, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't act rashly. To be continued. School Beauty's Personal Master 1483. School Beauty's Personal Master Chapter 1483. Slapping face slapping completed. Chapter 1486. School Beauty's Personal Master 1484. School Beauty's Personal Master Chapter 1484. Shocked Feng Nitian didn't even look back when he left, but Yushan turned around and laughed. Big bro, how was it? Good, right? You're not that good, are you? In front of Nitian bro, you're just trash. Ha 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 ha. At this time Yubing's face flashed with anger, but he didn't reply, and this made Lin Yi even more confused. It wasn't until the four of them were far away that Yubing raised his clenched fist unwillingly. What kind of evil arts is this? I can't even fight back? Could it be that he's from an ancient sect? Is he using the legendary realm? Yubing was angry, but he didn't chase after him immediately. He wasn't an idiot, and the opponent's arts were so strange. He hadn't heard of any hidden noble house or normal sect having such a powerful arts. Combined with Zhang Naipeo's arts he saw yesterday, Yubing was pretty sure that Feng Nitian was from an ancient sect or an ancient noble house. Plus, the arts he used were similar to the legendary realm that his grandpa had mentioned before. But this kind of realm was extremely difficult to practice, and it was limited by the body's constitution. Not everyone could practice it, and so Yubing didn't think too much of it. But now that he had experienced it himself, he knew how scary it was. At that moment his body seemed to be bound by something. He couldn't move at all. He had a body full of anger, but he couldn't vent it. If someone really used this mental cultivation method against an enemy, wouldn't that be the same as standing there waiting for death? It was too scary. What? That person is from an ancient sect? Lin Yi didn't quite understand what Yubing was talking about. What's a realm? Do you know? Lin Yi before. When he slapped me I couldn't move at all and I couldn't fight back. It was like I was tied down by an invisible force and I was paralyzed. Yu Bing smiled bitterly. If I'm not wrong, that person is from an ancient noble house or an ancient sect. People like that, we can't afford to mess with them. Forget it. Just like Zhang Naipeo yesterday, the practitioner's arts they practice are too powerful. To us, he's someone we can only look up to. He's not even on the same level. Another person from the ancient era? Lin Yi frowned. No wonder he felt that Yu Bing's reaction was weird, so this was it. I thought that you didn't make a move because there's something you're hiding. Otherwise, I would have made a move. It's fortunate that you didn't make a move. Otherwise, you'd get beaten up too. Yu Bing sighed. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. It's not like a hidden house getting slapped in the face by an ancient house is anything to be proud of. We can't get revenge anyways, we can only blame it on our bad luck. You can't do it? Lin Yi faintly asked, looking pensive. Of course I can't. Right. How are you? Are you still suffering? You look pretty good, haven't you? You've thought it through? Yu Bing waved his hand and stopped talking about his own matters, asking about Lin Yi instead. I'm fine. Let's talk in your room. Lin Yi pointed at the room behind Yu Bing. There weren't many people in the hallway of the inn, but in order to prevent eavesdroppers, it was better to talk in the room. All right, let's go. Yu Bing nodded and went back to his room. He wanted to tell Lin Yi about his discussion with his sister so that Lin Yi could be at ease. He didn't know if Lin Yi would give up on himself if he left like this. That wasn't what he and his sister wanted to see. Lin Yi followed Yu Bing into the room and closed the door. It seems like this test is going to be fun. A Zhang Naipeo and that ancient noble house guy, we have opponents. Yu Bing paused. You still want to participate in the test? Are you kidding me? Lin Yi, you may have lost all your strength, but you don't have to force yourself and you don't have to give up on yourself. I've already told Ning about your situation. Don't worry, we'll help you. Did you tell her? Lin Yi couldn't help but smile bitterly. I've been thinking about it, and I decided that I can't hide this from her. She'll be worried, but I need her help to get you some medicine from her house. Yu Bing said, don't worry, with me and Ning here, we'll help you get back on the path of training. You talk too fast. Lin Yi shrugged, not sure if he should laugh or cry. I told you yesterday. It's fine, I don't need medicine. Lin Yi, with our relationship, you don't have to be so courteous, you don't have to be so polite. Yu Bing insisted. You and I, what's there to be polite about? We're old friends. Lin Yi said, but I really don't need it. I don't need to go back on the path of training. What are you talking about? Yu Bing paused after hearing Lin Yi's words. Could it be that Zhang Naipeo used your qi to break through, and you got stimulated? Lin Yi didn't have a choice. He channeled the art of dragon mastery, unleashing his strength as a mystic late phase. Facts speak louder than words, and Lin Yi knew that no matter what he said, Yu Bing would think that he was just comforting him. He'd let him see it for himself. Enemy? Feeling Lin Yi's channeling of his arts, Yu Bing subconsciously thought that it was an enemy, but he came to his senses the next second. His eyes widened as he looked at Lin Yi as if he'd seen a ghost. How did you, mystic late phase? I've broken through, Lin Yi said as he retracted his qi back into his body and stopped his practitioner's arts. You're not crippled? You can still break through? Yu Bing felt like he'd heard a fairy tale. Didn't you become a cripple yesterday? I only lost my strength yesterday and I'm back after a nap, Lin Yi said. I told you yesterday that I'm fine. I'm really fine. Fuck. Yu Bing suddenly felt that the ancient sects and noble houses were nothing compared to this guy in front of him. This guy was the real deal. He lost his strength yesterday and now he broke through. Grandpa said that Xiao Ning was the hope of House Yu's glory. And if Xiao Ning really pulled Lin Yi over to House Yu's side, that would be amazing. Was this guy a cockroach? He was heavily injured yesterday and now he was fine? To be continued. School Beauty's Personal Master 1484. School Beauty's Personal Master Chapter 1484. Shocking update complete. Chapter 1487. School Beauty's Personal Master 1485. School Beauty's Personal Master Chapter 1485. Rumors and rumors article from %. Don't let Zhang Naipeo know about this first. We'll give him a surprise later. Of course. Yu Bing quickly nodded. You scared me to death. I thought you were just comforting me yesterday, but now I know that you're telling the truth. It's all right. Let's go out for a meal and get some information. Linny wanted to know more about Feng Nitian so that he could prepare a countermeasure during the test, but this guy's practitioner's arts were just too strange. With me looking like this, wouldn't I be a joke if I went out? Yu Bing pointed at his swollen cheeks and shook his head with a bitter smile. Linny channeled the art of dragon mastery and touched Yu Bing's face. All right, can we go now? All right. Yu Bing paused. He was about to say that he was joking when he realized that his face wasn't hurting anymore. He quickly touched it subconsciously and was surprised to find that his cheeks had returned to normal. There was no sign of swelling at all. I'm done. Linny nodded with certainty. I'm going crazy. Yu Bing looked at Linny, his eyes glowing green. You actually have a healing type of qi? How is that possible? Isn't that something only people from House Sun can do? Are you related to House Sun? Related? I don't think so. If I had to say, House Sun's Sun Jingyi is my half-lover. Linny said. Half-lover? Yu Bing paused but didn't ask. He didn't understand why Linny could accept Sun Jingyi, could accept other girls but not Ning. Was it really because of the resistance from his own family? It's fake. Linny smiled. In name only. Let's go out for a meal. All right. Yu Bing took a deep breath. In the past 2 days, he had seen all kinds of ruthless people one after another. His heart couldn't take it and was about to explode. Yesterday's Zhang Naipeo, today's Feng Nitian. In Yu Bing's eyes, they were all people he could only look up to, but in front of him, however, there was still a ruthless person who was even more powerful than them that he had almost overlooked. It was only now that Yu Bing sighed at his sister's sharp eyesight. His father was an idiot. A person like Linny was simply an existence that couldn't be roped in even with a lantern. But his father and grandfather just didn't like him. One had to know how popular the practitioners of the Sun family in the secular world were. Not to mention the aristocratic families in the secular world. Even the hidden aristocratic families and sects wanted to form a marriage alliance with the Sun family. There was once an ancient sect that formed a marriage alliance with the Sun family. What they valued was none other than the Sun family's ability to heal and transmit spiritual qi. But does Linny also know how to heal? But is Linny's healing ability like House Sun's? Only effective on one person. With that thought, Yu Bing couldn't help but ask Linny, your healing ability, can it be used on other people too? Yes, it can be used on animals too. Linny nodded. It can be used on animals too. Yu Bing took in a cold breath, a glimmer of hope flashing in his eyes. He quickly asked, what about ancient spirit beasts? Does it work? Think so. Linny nodded curiously and looked at Yu Bing, confused. Why do you ask? When Xiao Ning was young, she saved an injured ancient spirit beast, and it's been in House Yu's care ever since. Many doctors and pharmacists have seen it, but they couldn't cure it. Luckily, ancient spirit beasts have a very strong life force. As long as the qi in its body doesn't run out, it'll be able to sustain its life. I've been taking care of it all these years. Yu Bing explained. I really hope to find a doctor who can cure this ancient spirit beast. Can you help me out? Linny didn't think that his casual action would cause so much trouble. If Linny agreed to Yu Bing's request, then he would have to come into contact with Yu Ning. But could Linny say no? Not to mention the fact that Yu Bing was the one who suggested it, and that it was just a small thing for Linny to do. Just from the fact that he was injured and what Yu Ning told Yu Bing to say to him, Linny couldn't just stand by and watch. Putting aside the fact that Yu Bing was the one who brought it up, it was a piece of cake for Linny. Just from the fact that he was injured and what Yu Ning told Yu Bing to say to him, Linny couldn't just stand by and watch. There will be a chance. Yu Bing understood what Linny meant and smiled. There will be a chance. Yu Bing understood Linny's meaning and smiled. The two walked out of the inn and walked to the nearest food stall. Many of the participants were eating here, and the fact that Linny was crippled by Naipeo yesterday wasn't a secret. So when Linny appeared, everyone looked at him with all sorts of expressions. Some were sympathetic, some were mocking, some were gloating, and some were wondering why Linny didn't hurry back to think of a solution. Why did he continue staying here? But Linny didn't care about all this. He found a table and sat down with Yubing. He ordered a few dishes and started eating. These people were just curious, and after Linny and Yubing started eating, they didn't care about them anymore. They all went back to their previous topic, but some of the people at the table saw Linny, and the topic changed to Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nidian. Did you see that? That Zhang Naipeo from the ancient sects, you can't mess with him. That Ling Yi is the result of messing with him. A disciple of a hidden house said softly. Although his voice was soft, it didn't escape Yubing and Lin Yi's ears. They were all practitioners and they were so close to each other. Naturally, they could hear it clearly. But Lin Yi and Yubing pretended like they didn't hear anything. They were here to get information and they didn't talk much. They just kept eating. Yeah, that Zhang Naipeo is very strong, but I heard that Feng Nidian is just as strong as him. His skills are just too strong. Another disciple from a small sect added. I heard that he has a field. Just now, did you guys see it? That Yubing beside Ling Yi. He was slapped in the face by Feng Nitian's field. He couldn't fight back, it was just too strong. That Feng Nidian is also from the ancient house Feng. He's on the same level as the ancient sections. Us hidden houses and normal sects can't mess with him. The other person also sighed and said, during the trial we should hide. If we meet these two people, we will only be waiting for death. Yeah, we can hide if we can't mess with them. However, those two over there are really unlucky. They've offended two ancient-level enemies in one go. Unless they don't continue to participate in the trials, otherwise in the trials, TSK the results can be imagined. The disciple from the hidden family who had spoken before said with a bit of pity. To be continued, School Beauty's Personal Expert 1485. School Beauty's Personal Expert Text Chapter 1485. Gossips has been updated. Chapter 1488. School Beauty's Personal Master 1486. School Beauty's Personal Master Chapter 1486. Good news. Here's a piece of good news. This article came from %. Yeah, how unlucky, but there's nothing we can do about it. We can't afford to mess with ancient people. The disciple of the small sect who spoke before also nodded in agreement. However, in my opinion, these things don't have much to do with us. As long as we are careful, it'll be fine. We can't care about what happens to others. Yes. Another person nodded in agreement. After the meal, Linny and Yubing stood up and left. They had more or less gotten the information they wanted. The person who was with Yushan this morning was called Feng Nidian, from the ancient house Feng. His ultimate skill was heaven-defying arts, able to freeze people for around 3 minutes. What do you think? Do you have a plan? Yubing was very worried after hearing their discussion. Now that the grudge had been formed, he believed that if Zhang Naipeo met Linny in the test, he wouldn't hold back at all, he would kill him. And since Yushan was with Feng Nidian, he would be in danger as well. Yushan would probably use Feng Nidian to get rid of him, clearing the way for him to become the young master. If that happened, then he and Linny would have offended the two strongest people in the test. He couldn't help but worry. Linny was amazing as well, but 2 fists couldn't fight against 4 hands, and Feng Nidian's arts couldn't be easily countered. At least Yubing didn't know how to do it. This was a secret art passed down from the ancient times. It wasn't something a normal practitioner's arts could defend against. The feeling of being bound by Nidian was still fresh in Yubing's mind. He really couldn't move at all, and if Nidian wanted to kill him, he would have just stood there and waited for his death. Are you all right? Linny said faintly. I haven't thought of a complete solution yet. High-quality text first, all below. But we can take the risk or we can strike first. On the other hand, Linny felt more at ease after hearing about Feng Nidian's situation. Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nidian were good, they both had some achievements in the underhanded ways, but when it came to fighting face-to-face, Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nidian were the same. They might not have any advantage. In that case, Linny could play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. As long as he could find a way to overcome their consummate skills, it would be much easier to deal with them. Although Linny had no solution for the time being, Linny felt that finding a solution was only a matter of time. It was not a difficult task. That's good. Yu Bing placed all his hopes on Linny. If Linny had a way, then that would be great. Although Yu Bing said that, he was still a little worried. But no matter what, he couldn't back out from this test. That would mean that he had lost to Yushan, and even his grandfather and father would not be able to support him. It seemed that the road ahead was exceptionally dangerous. Linny could tell that Yu Bing was worried. Before they went back to their rooms, Linny patted Yu Bing's shoulder. Be consoled, don't worry. When the time comes, it's fine if these two people from the ancient era don't provoke me. If they do, don't blame me for being impolite. I'll make them come here standing and send them back in wheelchairs. How good. Have you this sentence? I'm relieved. Yu Bing was relieved after hearing that. Thinking about Linny's miracles, maybe a miracle really could happen. Linny went back to his room to think of a plan. Yu Bing, on the other hand, returned to his room. He immediately dialed his sister Yuning's phone. Brother. How is he? Is he okay? Yuning and Yu Bing were the same, they didn't sleep well the whole night. Yuning was thinking about how to get the medicine from the family, and she was also worried about Linny's safety. She kept her phone close to her hand, waiting for her brother to contact her. So at the moment when the phone rang, Yuning answered it. You picked up already? Yu Bing paused but immediately understood what his sister was thinking. He smiled. Ning, you look worried? Brother, why are you still joking at a time like this? Yuning wasn't happy, but it was her brother, so she couldn't get angry. Haha, are you joking? I don't have the mood to joke with you. Yu Bing stopped teasing Yuning and said directly, Sister, let me tell you a good news. What good news? I don't want to hear it first. Yuning said, Brother, tell me first, how is he? Sister, you're too worried. You really don't want to hear the good news? The good news is about Linny. Yu Bing smiled. Linny? His good news. Isn't he? Yuning frowned slightly, and her face suddenly lit up. There's a turn for the better? Sister, your eyesight is really out of this world. I have to admire you, you're really good at reading people. Yu Bing sighed, do you know? Yesterday Linny was crippled, really crippled. He had no strength left in him. I could feel that he was even weaker than a normal person, but this morning he came to find me and guess what? What, he recovered half. Yuning made a bold guess, although she felt that it was impossible. She had never heard of anyone recovering half of their strength in one night. However, her brother had praised Linny before, and even said that she had good eyesight. That must mean that Linny was very strong, so Yuning made a bold guess. Although when her brother said that her eyesight was out of this world, Yuning blushed a little, but now she couldn't care about these details. No, guess again. Yu Bing shook his head to keep her in suspense. Then he recovered a third? Yuning lowered her assumption. After all, her previous guess was too bold. Sister, can't you guess more boldly? Is your eyesight that bad? Think about it, that's out of this world. Yu Bing shook his head. Could it be that he recovered to his original state? That's not possible, right? Really? Yuning exclaimed in surprise. He didn't recover to his original state, Yu Bing said. I knew it. If he could recover in one night, he wouldn't be human. Yuning patted her chest, she was shocked by herself. I haven't finished yet. Yu Bing said, he didn't recover to his original state, he broke through. He was at the peak of the middle phase before, but this morning he's at the late phase. Ah! After Yuning heard it, she was so shocked that she almost threw the phone in her hand. She held the phone tightly, and her breathing became a little rough. Brother, are you telling the truth? You're not lying to me? Why would I lie to you? Don't you trust your own eyesight? Yu Bing couldn't help but smile bitterly when he heard his sister's excited voice. In fact, he was shocked when he first heard the news. To be continued. School Beauty's Personal Expert 1486. School Beauty's Personal Expert Chapter 1486. Good news. Let me tell you a piece of good news. Chapter 1489. School Beauty's Personal Expert 1487. School Beauty's Personal Expert Chapter 1487 Ice Palace Someone from the Ice Palace. This article came from %. That's unbelievable. He broke through? Yuning's face flashed a blush of happiness. Sure enough, her brother said that her eyesight was not bad. It seemed that it was really not bad. She knew he wasn't simple. He wasn't weaker than her at all. Yeah, I'm telling you the good news, you don't have to worry anymore, Yubing said. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up first. The plan is cancelled as well. Yuning nodded happily. As for the ancient houses and sex, Yubing didn't talk too much with his sister. He realized that he was worrying too much. Linny was fine before, but he was so worried that his sister was worried as well. So this time Yubing learned his lesson and told Yuning about what happened here after the test was over. Who knows, maybe he and Linny would be able to pass the test without a hitch. Yang Qiqi came to the inn and stayed in her room. Her personality was like that, very cold, and she didn't want to make friends. Her goal here was simple, to participate in the test. So she didn't know what happened these 2 days. She didn't even know that Linny was here. At around 8 o'clock in the evening, a loud and clear voice suddenly came from outside the inn. High-quality text first, all at %. All students participating in the Ice Palace test. Attention! The registration period has ended, and we will begin the registration process now. All students of the inn, please gather at the plaza in front of the inn in 10 minutes to accept the registration from the Ice Palace messengers and pay the deposit. We will not wait after the deadline. The voice was full of energy, indicating that the speaker was very strong. But those who were familiar with the voice should be able to recognize it. The person who shouted was actually the owner of the inn. Earth class. This startled Lin Yi. He didn't think that the owner of the inn was an Earth class, and when he stayed in the inn before, in other words, this old man had used some sort of secret technique to conceal his cultivation. This surprised Lin Yi. It seemed that the ancient sects were not on the same level as the hidden houses. None of the ancient sects were simple. Lin Yi quickly left the room, and Yubing's door opened at the same time. The two looked at each other and prepared to go downstairs together. At that moment, Yang Qiqi walked out from a room not too far away. She paused when she saw Lin Yi. Qiqi didn't understand why was this guy here again. She couldn't help but curse her unluck. Seeing him reminded her of the time when he saw her body, but she couldn't beat him. She couldn't kill him, not to mention that he was her savior. This troubled her even more. Yang Qiqi didn't think about it when she didn't see Lin Yi. She even tried to forget about Lin Yi. After all, it was like a nightmare to her. But now that she saw Lin Yi, she couldn't help but remember those unhappy memories. She frowned and turned her head away, not looking at Lin Yi anymore. At the same time, Zhao Qikuan, Zhao Qizhou Yushan and Feng Nitian walked out as well. Zhao Qikuan saw Lin Yi and was as passionate as ever. He didn't seem to be affected by what happened in the morning. Brother Ling Yi, are you still going to join the test? Because Lin Yi was going downstairs with Yubing, naturally he was going to sign up for the test. This surprised Zhao Qikuan. Could Lin Yi still participate in the test in his current condition? Without strength, wouldn't it be suicide to participate in the test? Yeah. Lin Yi nodded. He didn't explain much. On the other hand, when Qiqi heard Zhao Qikuan call Lin Ling, a strange look flashed across her eyes. Ling Yi? He was called Ling Yi? How could he have this name? Wasn't he called Lin Yi? Yes, it must be because he was called Lin Yi. He didn't want people to know his real name, so he changed his name to Ling Yi. Let's just say it. High-quality text first, all are %. Ling Yi was such a good name, how could he call himself that? But this guy was really despicable, calling himself that person's name. If there was a chance, she wouldn't let him go. How dare he use a Yi's name? Some people really don't fear death. Naipeo's voice rang. He saw Lin Yi as well, even he didn't think that Lin Yi would still be here. He was a cripple now, what was the point of staying here? But for a cripple like Lin Yi, Naipeo didn't care anymore. Even if he did, he'd do it in front of Liang Bro. If he killed Lin Yi here, Liang Bro wouldn't be happy, but he didn't forget to make fun of Lin Yi. Thank you for the chi you trained so hard, haha. It helped me break through to Mystic Late Phase TSK, it feels so good. You're welcome, Lin Yi said faintly. Ha 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 ha. Naipeo started laughing crazily. Naipeo bro, you're amazing. Congratulations. Feng Nidian congratulated. He and Naipeo belonged to the ancient class, and there was no need for them to fight each other here. After all, they were the strongest here, and if they were to fight, the hidden houses and small sects would think that it was a dog-eat-dog fight, and that wouldn't be interesting at all. Plus, Feng Nitian's goal was to become the head of House Feng, and Naipeo's goal was to become the disciple of the Grand Elder. It was good for them to get to know more powerful people. And so, other than the first few who were sucking up to them, the two of them didn't accept any other disciples. If they all joined their side, then the test would lose its meaning, and it would become a fight between the two of them. That wasn't something they wanted to see. And they had agreed during breakfast that they wouldn't interfere with each other's teams, they'd work together to steal points from other teams. Nidian bro is amazing as well. I don't think I'll get a higher score than you in this test. Naipeo said with a smile. What he said was the truth. Nidian only needed to use one move, and he'd be able to bind the others. He didn't even need to lift a finger, and he'd be able to steal their points. But Naipeo wasn't worried at all. He didn't even need to lift a finger, and he'd be able to scare the others into giving up their points. Otherwise, they'd become trash like Lin Yi. Hearing the two big shots flattering each other, Lin Yi's lips curled into a cold smile. They still wanted to do well in the test? Just wait and see. Lin Yi and Yu Bing walked down the stairs side by side, ignoring the people behind them. Yang Qiqi, on the other hand, followed closely behind Lin Yi. Zhuang Niapeo, on the other hand, couldn't help but humphed coldly when he saw Yang Qiqi. To be continued. School Beauty's Personal Expert 1487. School Beauty's Personal Expert Chapter 1487. Ice Palace's Personal Expert. The people from Ice Palace had finished updating. Chapter 1490. Zhuang Niapeo had always had his eyes on Qiqi, but Naipeo didn't seem to be interested in her at all, so he couldn't make a decision on his own. He could only smile coldly and think about how he would open the door for her during the test. Although the inn owner had given them a time limit of 10 minutes, none of the participants dared to waste any time. It wasn't even 5 minutes when they all arrived at the plaza in front of the inn. Lin Yi and Yu Bing found a spot first and sat cross-legged on the ground. The other disciples came over and copied Lin Yi and Yu Bing, finding their own spots to sit down. The owner of the inn, on the other hand, was standing straight on the flower altar in front of the square. His Earth-class late-phase peak power fully displayed, not hiding anything at all. Beside him was a woman dressed in white, around 10 or so years of age, but Lin Yi's intuition and years of medical experience told him that this woman was definitely older than that. She should be at least 30 years old, but she took good care of herself. Was it because of her training in the heart, or was it because she had entered Sky Class, reducing the aging of her face? But entering Sky Class didn't mean that one could regain their youthfulness. After entering Sky Class, one's face was fixed at the moment before they entered Sky Class. This meant that this girl had broken through to Sky Class at 18? Was that even possible? Or perhaps the ancient noble houses had pills that could keep one's face forever. Like the face pill. Lin Yi had seen this recipe in Zhang Liju's notes before, but while it could keep one's face forever, it couldn't extend one's lifespan. Even so, it was still a golden class 4th level pill, and it was extremely difficult to make. The success rate was very low, and if the Ice Palace had it, then it wouldn't be easy. Soon, all the disciples who had come to participate in the trial had arrived. They all sat down with their legs crossed, waiting for the Ice Palace envoy to speak. The woman nodded indifferently when she saw that everyone had arrived and said, "Since everyone is here, then let's begin. Let me introduce myself. I'm Xiao Qing, the maidservant of the Ice Palace's palace master. I'm also the emissary who will be bringing you to the Ice Palace's territory for the trial." Although this woman was just a servant, no one dared to look down on her. Looking at the way the inn owner was treating her with respect, it was easy to tell. The inn owner was an Earth-class late-phase peak, half a step into Sky Class, but he was being so respectful to this servant. One could only imagine her position in the Ice Palace. The palace master's maidservant. If the palace master was someone with absolute authority in the ice palace, then her maidservant was probably on the same level as the elders. You can call her emissary Qing or elder Qing. The inn owner reminded all the trial challengers present to prevent them from calling Little Blue the emissary and causing a lot of trouble. Of course, they weren't idiots. If they couldn't even see through this, then they weren't fit to participate in this trial. These people were all smart people. How could they not understand this? Most of you are from hidden aristocratic families and sects, but there are a few who are special. They are from ancient aristocratic families and ancient sects. Qing paused and glanced at the disciples present. She continued, "But in the eyes of the ice palace, there is no special treatment. We will treat everyone the same and will not give special treatment. Don't think that you have any sense of superiority, otherwise the ice palace will stop your right to participate and send out a notice to the ancient level. Your conduct will be reported, and you will be listed as a member of the Black Viper sect." Other than Naipeo and Nitian, many of the hidden houses and sect's disciples were in an uproar after hearing Qing's words. Wasn't this ice palace a little too much? They didn't even give the ancient housefeng and the sect any face at all. Naipeo and Nitian, on the other hand, knew that the ice palace was like a giant dam in the ancient sections. They didn't participate in the battle against the Day and Day sect back then. If they did, then the Day and Day sect wouldn't be doing so well right now. The ice palace belonged to a relatively neutral force, drifting between the righteous and evil factions. The ice palace's people rarely participated in those struggles. Instead, they focused on cultivation. This was also the reason why the ice palace had so many heaven rank experts. Don't worry, Elder Qing, since Brother Feng and I are in the ice palace's territory, we will follow the rules. Naipeo stood up and cupped his fist. Yes, Brother Naipeo is right, we are here to participate in the trial, and we must follow the rules like everyone else. Nitian said. Very good. Qing nodded and continued. Now, I'll briefly explain the rules of the trial. If you don't accept it, then you can leave. If you don't, then you'll have to pay the deposit. Tomorrow morning, the trial will officially begin. Shaoli, read out the rules of the trial. Yes, Elder Qing. The inn owner hurriedly nodded his head, as he announced the rules of the trial in a clear voice. The duration of this trial is 3 days. The trial location is the Ice Palace's outer perimeter, the Ice Snow Spirit Mountain. During the trial, you will be required to traverse various perilous situations and harvest various herbs. Every time you obtain a herb, you will be rewarded with corresponding points. The points will be automatically assessed according to the quality of the herb. Of course, you can fight each other for points as well, but remember, you can hurt people, but you can't put people in danger. If you break this rule, you will be severely punished by the Ice Palace. This rule wasn't present in the previous trials. In the past trials, everyone had their own destiny, and the Ice Palace wouldn't interfere. But this time it was different. Because there were disciples from ancient noble houses and ancient sects joining the trials, the Ice Palace added this rule for the sake of safety. 1. They were afraid that the disciples of the ancient noble houses and ancient sects would act recklessly and kill the disciples of the hidden houses and normal sects. Secondly, they were afraid that the disciples of the hidden aristocratic families and ancient sects would band together and attack the disciples of the ancient sects and ancient aristocratic families. This would increase the conflict, and the Ice Palace would form a grudge with the hidden aristocratic families and ancient aristocratic families. In the future, not only would he not be able to continue holding trials to earn money, he would also have to form a grudge with the sect of Tomorrow for Tomorrow and the ancient Feng clan. Chapter 1491. As soon as this rule was announced, all the challengers were very surprised. This was because this rule was different from what they had heard from their elders at home. However, most of them were very happy after hearing it. At least no matter what, they would be able to keep their lives and would not lose their lives. The stronger ones didn't mind, but there were many early phase mystic class participants here, and they were a bit worried. This rule made them feel better. However, a lot of people still turned their attention to Lin Yi suspicious. Why did it seem like the rules were made for this guy? He didn't have any strength and was even weaker than a normal person. If he went to the trial, people wouldn't dare do anything to him. If they used too much strength, they could kill him. If he failed, not only would he not be able to participate in the test, but he'd also be breaking the rules of the Ice Palace, bringing trouble to themselves. A lot of people had the same thought. If Lin Yi was going to participate in the test, they should stay away from him and not let him stick to them. In addition, the entire process of the trial will be recorded on the electronic card that I will send to you later. Your points will also be displayed on the electronic card. The inn owner said, including during the trial, if the medicinal herbs in your hands are snatched by others, then the points will be transferred accordingly. But be careful, don't damage the ingredients because of fighting. Not only will you not get any points, but you will also get points deducted. Card. Isn't it jade? A descendant of a family had clearly heard that the recording device in the trial was a piece of jade, and not an electronic card, so he subconsciously asked. Jade is something used in the past, and with the advancement of technology, the recording devices of the Ice Palace have naturally been changed to technology. The cost of a jade to record information is too high. The inn owner explained, alright, is there anything else you don't understand? If there's no doubt, then I'll register you and collect the security deposit. No. Everyone shook their heads. What a joke. Everyone was here to participate in the trial. How could they give up just because of a small change in the rules? Wouldn't that be a waste of time? Alright, then let's start from this row. One by one, come up and register. Swipe your card to pay the deposit. The inn owner said to the closest participants. Yes. The trial taker at the front got up and walked over. He filled in his information on the information booklet given by the innkeeper. Just as he was about to swipe his card to pay the deposit, the innkeeper waved his hand. Give me your hand, I want to test your strength. The innkeeper said lightly. Can't I just circulate my cultivation method? Do I even need to stretch out my hand? The challenger asked in surprise. Lin Yi, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes. He'd never seen this participant before. Evidently, he'd been hiding in his room ever since he'd arrived, and hadn't come out until the inn owner called for everyone to gather. However, that wasn't what caught Lin Yi's attention. It was the fact that this person was an Earth-class early-phase spiritual practitioner. He had already exceeded the requirements of the trial. No wonder he was so nervous when the innkeeper wanted to check his strength. No need, give me your hand, the inn owner said faintly. The trial taker hesitated, but still reached out his hand. He was secretly channeling his chi and suppressing his strength to mystic late-phase peak. He didn't reveal his Earth-class early-phase strength. I told you there's no need. What kind of chi are you channeling? The inn owner looked coldly at the trial taker and scanned his registration information. Gone Mountain Sect disciple Wajin Dao, pretending to be a mystic late-phase peak, has been verified to be an Earth-class early phase. Your right to participate in the trial is revoked. The Gone Mountain Sect will be blacklisted, and will not be allowed to participate in the Ice Palace trial for the next 10 years. AI. When the Gone Mountain Sect disciple called Wajin Dao heard the words of the inn owner, he immediately revealed a dejected expression. He originally thought that hiding his strength wouldn't be discovered. In the end, he was found out when he registered, and even his own sect was banned from participating in the trials for 10 years. But of course he didn't dare argue with the Ice Palace people. Without another word, he ran to the parking lot, ready to go back to his sect. Everyone present was shocked at this, including Lin Yi. This inn owner was quite something indeed. Not only was he able to hide his strength, but he could also sense someone else's true strength through a handshake. Although Lin Yi had this ability as well, Lin Yi had trained in the art of dragon mastery. He had a golden finger. This inn owner was just a servant of the Ice Palace. How could he have this ability? Is there anyone else hiding their strength? If you leave now, I won't hold your sects and families accountable. Otherwise, when my results come out, your families and sects will also be banned from participating in the Ice Palace's trial for 10 years. The inn owner looked at everyone present and shouted. This time, a few of the disciples stood up and shook their heads bitterly as they walked to the parking lot. Evidently, these people had been hiding their strength. Linny looked at them and was a bit surprised. There was an Earth class mid-phase here. Linny couldn't check out their strength one by one, so he was quite shocked by what he saw. No more? Then continue, but if there is someone else mixed in, don't blame me for being impolite. After the inn owner finished speaking, he pointed to the nearest challenger in front of him and said, "It's your turn." Yes. This person was Naipeo's follower, Zhuangniapeo. He walked up to the inn owner respectfully and registered his information before extending his hand. Yes, Mystic Mid-Phase Peak. The inn owner nodded and looked at his information. Hidden House Zhuangniapeo. You can go to Elder Qing and swipe your card. Yes. Zhuangniapeo quickly nodded and took out a bank card to swipe it. After that, the rest of the participants went to register and swipe their cards. But Linny noticed one thing: there were freelancers amongst them, meaning that they didn't belong to any sects or houses. The inn owner, however, didn't seem to have any qualms with people like this. As long as their strength was up to par, they'd be allowed to pay. Chapter 1492. In a blink of an eye, it was Pai Jishan and Pai Jihai's turn. Pai Jishan went up to register his information and then extended his hand, waiting for the inn owner to test his strength. He was the first physical practitioner, but he wasn't sure if the inn owner could test a physical practitioner's strength. Mystic Late Phase Peak Physical Strength. The inn owner didn't fail the test just because Pai Jishan was a physical practitioner. He quickly reported his strength. Go pay the deposit. Yes. Pai Jishan passed the card to Elder Qing, but kept giving Pai Jihai looks. Pai Jihai was an Earth-class early-phase physical practitioner, so there was no way he could pass the test. So Pai Jishan wanted him to leave as soon as possible. Previously, Pai Jihai didn't stand up because Pai Jishan wanted to be lucky. He wasn't sure if the inn owner could test the strength of a physical master, so he wanted to be the first to test it. If the inn owner couldn't, then Pai Jihai would come up as well. If he could, then Pai Jihai would quickly return home. Pai Jihai got Pai Jishan's signal, so he got up to leave, but was stopped by the inn owner. Where are you going? I'm going to give up. I'm not going to the test anymore. Pai Jihai jumped. You're not going to participate? Why? The inn owner asked coldly. I'm not feeling well. Pai Jihai's heart was pounding. The hidden house Pai was powerful in front of normal houses, but in front of an ancient sect, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Not feeling well? Come here. The inn owner said. Did I say you could leave? Pai Jihai didn't dare disobey the inn owner, and he couldn't run. In front of an Earth-class late-phase peak, what was an Earth-class early phase like him? Plus he couldn't run away forever. He didn't need to investigate his identity to know that he'd drag House Pai down with him. So Pai Jihai hesitated, but still turned around and walked back. Which family are you from? The inn owner asked. Hidden House Pai. Pai Jihai said honestly. Give me your hand. The innkeeper shouted. Although unwilling, Pai Jihai had no choice but to extend his hand and shake the innkeeper's hand. Earth-class early phase physical power? The Hidden House Pai's qualification is revoked, and you can't participate for the next 10 years. The inn owner humphed. What about me? Pai Jishan was shocked and quickly asked. Aren't you from the Hidden House Pai? The inn owner asked. Pai Jishan was depressed. If he knew this would happen, he would have asked Pai Jihai to go back. Along the way, he had asked Pai Jihai to hide his strength. In the inn, he didn't reveal any flaws. He wanted to muddle through and shine in the trial. But he didn't expect that he still couldn't pass this strict test. Physical practitioners are weaker than spiritual practitioners by a level, so he's equivalent to a mystic late-phase peak spiritual practitioner. Jishan struggled to explain. Are you deaf? The innkeeper snorted. Did I say that external Earth-rank martial artists could participate? Leave now, don't bring trouble to your Hidden House Pai. I know. Pai Jishan didn't know what to do. Why was he so unlucky? But he didn't dare say anything about the ice palace. He could only say dejectedly, "Then my deposit. The deposit is not refundable. It's already been deducted." Qing returned the card to Pai Zhishan coldly. What? Zhishan didn't think that he wouldn't be able to participate in the trial, and he had to pay 100 million. This was a double loss. Wasn't this too bad? But since the ice palace said they wouldn't give it to him, he didn't dare ask anymore. He could only leave with Pai Zhihai. The person behind Pai Zhihai was Lin Yi. He was the closest, and seeing Pai Zhishan's pained expression, he couldn't help but laugh. Lin Yi naturally knew who the hidden house Pai was. To an unfriendly family like this, Lin Yi could only laugh at them. Zhishan heard Lin Yi's laughter, and his expression froze. Hatred flashed across his face as he turned to glare at Lin Yi. "It's you? That cripple? Very well, Ling Yi, right? Pai Zhishan will remember you. We'll meet again." Pai Zhishan was furious, but he didn't dare to vent it on the ice palace. To him, this unlucky bastard bumped into him, so he wouldn't be courteous anymore. He would find this Ling Yi to vent his anger on. Iso said, "Next time we meet, you can buy a coffin." "Humph." Pai Zhishan laughed coldly. "You talk too fast." With the ice palace people here, naturally, he didn't dare to do anything to Lin Yi. After laughing coldly, he left with Pai Zhihai, but he remembered Lin Yi's face. His hatred with the hidden house Pai couldn't be resolved anymore. His follower Erguden had killed quite a few of their mouths. Even if this didn't happen, they would still be dead. Lin Yi wasn't afraid of offending House Pai. "Don't say anything, you register." The inn owner glanced at Lin Yi, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. He had seen Lin Yi being crippled with his own eyes, and now Lin Yi didn't leave, but instead participated in the trial. This further confirmed the inn owner's previous guess. The person who broke through upstairs was Lin Yi in front of him. Yes, Lin Yi registered his information. His strength was Mystic Late Phase, his sect was Freelancer, and his name was Ling Yi. After looking at Lin Yi's strength, the inn owner was sure that Lin Yi had broken through. He was very curious and troubled. Just how did this guy do it? Of course, these were personal secret. Even if the ice palace was powerful, they didn't have the right to ask about other people's training methods. "Give me your hand." The inn owner couldn't wait to confirm Lin Yi's strength. Chapter 1493. The inn owner shook Lin Yi's hand the next moment. A look of shock appeared on his face. From what he could sense, Lin Yi didn't have any strength at all. He was no different from a normal person. Could it be that he hadn't recovered and was lying to him? "Your strength?" The inn owner was about to ask when he suddenly felt the change in Lin Yi's strength. Lin Yi's strength went from 0 at the beginning to Mystic Mid-Phase peak all of a sudden. Lin Yi could tell from the inn owner's expression that his guess was right. Before he used the art of dragon mastery, his strength was hidden. Even someone like the inn owner couldn't accurately judge his strength. Of course, Lin Yi was just testing it. He wouldn't make things too difficult for the inn owner. After all, he was the one asking for help from the ice palace, and if things went sour, how would Lin Yi get the fruit? Plus, Lin Yi's background was questionable to begin with. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't cause any more problems. But in order to test if he could hide his strength, Lin Yi suppressed it to Mystic Mid-Phase peak, to see if the inn owner could see his full strength. The inn owner was shocked, a strange look flashing across his eyes as he looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. How could it be Mid-Phase peak? Lin Yi smiled faintly, no longer holding back. In an instant, his strength as a Mystic Late Phase was displayed to the fullest. The inn owner looked at Lin Yi meaningfully, but didn't say anything else. Lin Yi's strength could be suppressed, could be hidden, and had already exceeded the scope of the inn owner's probing. Although he was shocked, this was related to the practitioner's arts, and he couldn't ask about it. This was a taboo in Wulin, and the more ancient a sect was, the more important the rules of Wulin were. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had the right to participate in the trial. Although he could hide his strength, it didn't break any rules. The inn owner announced, "Ling Yi Freelancer Mystic Late Phase, you can go pay the deposit." "What? Mystic Late Phase?" Naipeo was the first to yell out. He had sucked Lin Yi dry, And he knew that Linny was now a cripple. He couldn't believe that the owner was saying that Linny was a mystic late phase. How was that possible? At the same time, Zhuang Niapeo, Zhuang Niaoqiang, and the others beside Niapeo were all shocked as well. They saw the whole process of Linny becoming a cripple with their own eyes, but how could Linny still be a mystic late phase? Could it be a mistake? Although they had their doubts, they weren't Niapeo, and they didn't have a background like him. They wouldn't dare say anything like that. Li's test, of course, wouldn't be wrong. Do you have any questions? Qing evidently trusted the owner a lot, as she looked at Niapeo faintly. She didn't give him any face just because he was from an ancient sect. That was how the Ice Palace did things. They'd changed the rules to take care of you guys, and that was already good enough. There was no way they'd give you anything else. No. Niapeo shook his head. What else could he say after what the guy said? Niapeo, on the other hand, looked at Linny hatefully. He didn't know why Linny didn't lose his strength, but he warned coldly, I don't care if you're a mystic late phase or not, we'll see what happens in this trial. Only Zhang Niapeo would dare say something like that. Anyone else would have been scared of the Ice Palace. Of course, Niapeo knew that he was doing this for Linny, not the Ice Palace. The Ice Palace wouldn't say anything about it. Alright, I was just about to get my revenge. Linny nodded to Niapeo. Niapeo wanted to say something, but Nidian smiled at him. Do you really need to be angry at someone like that? We'll just cripple him. Those who thought that Linny didn't have any strength now understood that it wasn't that Linny didn't have any strength, but that he had already recovered. Plus, the owner was in charge of the test. No one would be able to pass. Wanting to participate in the trial without strength? That was impossible. You're right. Niapeo nodded. People like him are like ants. Killing him is just a matter of minutes. Since he's coming to me, that means he's increasing my strength. I'll just turn him into a cripple. I don't believe he'll be able to recover. That's right. Nidian said enviously, Brother Niapeo, you're so strong. Leveling up is so easy for you. That's true. Niapeo said proudly, but his heart was filled with bitterness. Who could understand the pain and bitterness of his own training? You guys trained while enjoying yourselves, but I had to train while being bitten by poisonous bugs and bees after castrating myself. How could that compare? Linny looked at these two bragging bastards and smiled coldly. After Linny swiped his card, it was Yu Bing and Yu Shan's turn to test their strength and pay the deposit. The rest of them had a smooth journey as well. No one tried to hide their strength. After collecting everyone's deposits, Little Qing had the innkeeper distribute electronic point cards to everyone. She then said, tomorrow morning at 6:30 sharp here, I will lead everyone to the Ice Palace's trial location. Don't wait after the deadline. Yes, everyone said solemnly. There's one more thing, I have to remind you all that from the start of the trial to the moment you leave the Ice Palace, nothing is to be leaked. If I find out, you guys will be hunted down by the Ice Palace. Little Qing warned coldly as she glared at the group of people. Yes, everyone replied. Who would dare try being hunted down by the Ice Palace? Qing didn't say anything else as she turned around and left. In an instant, the strength of a sky-class mid-phase was on full display, making all the disciples gasp in shock. A maidservant of the Ice Palace's palace master was actually at the mid-heaven class. Then, how strong was the palace master? Could she be sky-class late-phase peak? Of course, they only thought about it in their hearts and didn't dare to speculate. This maid was already so powerful, so the palace master must be even more amazing. Little Qing hadn't gone far yet. If she heard them talking behind her back, what would they do? Chapter 1494. In the ancient times, sky class wasn't everywhere, but there were still quite a few. But if one didn't stand at this height, how would one be able to see all this? Life was like that, like a frog in the well. If one didn't go out, they would never know what the outside world was like. At the parking lot, the Pai brothers and Wajin Dao, who hadn't left yet, had a shocked expression on their faces. Sky class mid-phase at that. A maidservant was even stronger than the elders of the house or sect, and yet she was still a maidservant. Luckily, they didn't try to defend themselves when they were chased out, otherwise they wouldn't even know how they died. Pai Jishan and Pai Jihai looked at each other, and the two helplessly got in the car, ready to return to the hidden house. Pai. They had stayed in the parking lot to see if there was anything they could do, but it seemed like it was no longer possible. It would be good enough if they didn't get punished. Ling Yi. Pai Jishan will never forgive you, just you wait. Jishan was very furious. Not only did he not get to participate in the test, but he also lost 100 million. How unlucky. But he didn't dare point his finger at the ice palace, so he could only vent his anger on Lin Yi. That's just a small figure. It's hard to say if he'll make it back alive. He offended Zhang Naipeo of the Ri after Ri sect and Feng Nitian of the ancient house foe. Even if he doesn't die, he'll be crippled. Jihai said, it's fine big bro, the test isn't much anymore. I'm already showing signs of breaking through to Earth class early phase peak. Our hidden house Pi has the advantage amongst all the hidden houses, and aren't you about to break through as well? That's true. Jishan nodded. Plus, our advantage over the other houses is that we're united. Unlike the other houses that fight and scheme against each other. That's right, I think it's great now. I'm not suited to managing a family's affairs, I like to train, so let Big Brother be the leader and I'll be the assistant. House Pi will be fine for at least 100 years. Pai Jihai nodded. Once I break through to Sky Class, my lifespan will increase, and protecting House Pi for a while longer won't be hard. From this, it could be seen that the two brothers from House Pi were smart and capable of doing big things. However, they made a serious mistake, and that was underestimating Lin Yi's strength. They treated Ling Wen and Lin Yi as two different people. After Little Qing left, the innkeeper waved his hand at everyone and said, "Go back and disperse." Only then did everyone get up and walk towards the inn. All of a sudden, Lin Yi felt a cold light coming from behind him, and he subconsciously turned around to see Yushan not far behind him and Yu Bing. His eyes were cold, and when he saw Lin Yi turn around, he turned around and started chatting with Feng Nitian. Lin Yi frowned. Yushan really wasn't a good person, and he was probably going to do something to Yu Bing in this test. As for why Lin Yi could feel the coldness, it was just an assassin's sixth sense. After returning to the inn, Yu Bing went straight to Lin Yi's room and said worriedly, "Lin Yi, tomorrow's test doesn't look good. But the Ice Palace has a new rule: we can't kill people. This way we won't be in danger." This rule? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. It's better if it didn't come out at all. It's probably to take care of those two disciples from the ancient noble houses, afraid that something bad might happen to them. I was planning to kill them all in this test. As for Zhang Naipeo, Lin Yi didn't have any reason to hold back. This guy was his enemy, and from what he said, he wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Between him and Pinliang, there was no way he could resolve the conflict. If that was the case, he might as well use this test to break one of Pinliang's arms. But now it seemed impossible. The Ice Palace wouldn't allow that to happen. Ha! Yu Bing's eyes went wide after hearing Lin Yi's words. No way? You want to kill them? Yu Bing was still worried about tomorrow's test, but on Lin Yi's side, he was worried about not being able to kill his enemies. People really were different. If I don't kill them, we'll be enemies sooner or later. Lin Yi said faintly, "Do you think there's any way to resolve the conflict between you and Feng Nitian? He's with Yushan, and he's already your enemy." Sight. Every house has all sorts of problems. Yu Bing sighed. "I know that, so I want to help you get rid of Yushan as well." Lin Yi smiled. "That guy needs a beating. I can't kill him, but at least cripple him so he can't practice anymore." Yu Bing jumped, not expecting Lin Yi to want to deal with Yushan, and cripple him as well. This suggestion shocked even Yu Bing himself. But, as much as Yu Bing hated Yushan, he was still his brother. He couldn't bring himself to do something like that. He was moved when Lin Yi suggested this, but after calming down, he felt that he couldn't do it. "No, Lin Yi, you can't do this. After all, he's my cousin. I can't hurt him." Yu Bing shook his head. "It's not you, it's me." Lin Yi pointed at himself. This has nothing to do with you. You can push all the blame on me, plus I've been displeased with him for a long time now. But I can't just watch you deal with him. Yu Bing still couldn't convince himself. Alright, then can you promise that he won't jump out and cause trouble for us in this test? Linny asked. I can't. Yu Bing shook his head. Isn't that fine then? He jumped out and wanted to die, who can he blame? Linny shrugged and said, I promise you I won't make the first move. Is that okay? But if you touch him, you'll make House Yu hate you even more, you and Ning. Yu Bing said worriedly. Chapter 1495. You're right. Yu Bing gritted his teeth. I'll try my best. Don't think too much, just leave it to me, Linny said. Right, do you have confidence in dealing with them? Yu Bing asked. A little, but I need to act according to the situation, around 50%. Linny said honestly. I've calculated a few possibilities. I hope one of them will work. That's good enough. Yu Bing breathed in relieved. A 50-50 chance of winning was already very good. After all, a fight between two masters of similar strength always had a 50-50 chance of winning. Not to mention that there was a huge difference in strength between him and Linny right now. Rest early, the test starts tomorrow, Linny said. Alright. Yu Bing nodded and got ready to leave. Sleep here, I'm afraid that Yushan will do something to you at night. This is the last chance to kill you before the test starts. Linny remembered the coldness in Yushan's eyes and pointed at the bed beside him. What about you? There's only a single bed here? Yu Bing asked. I won't sleep, I can just sit on the sofa and train, Linny said. Sleep, don't worry about time, I'll wake you up when I see you. Alright. Yu Bing nodded, not rejecting him. That night, as Linny had expected, Yushan and Nitian came to the room next to Lin Yi's. Nitian bro, I'm counting on you. You hold him down and I'll make my move. Yushan whispered to Nitian, his eyes filled with lust. No problem. Nitian nodded. Feng Nitian's art consumed a lot of qi, and if it wasn't something important he wouldn't use it. Plus, there was a limit to the number of times he could use it, but today he was here to help Yushan fight Yu Bing. The reason wasn't because of Nitian's loyalty, but because Yushan had promised him that once he killed Yu Bing, he'd have the chance to become the head of House Yu. If he became the head of House Yu, he'd make sure that House Yu would become the vassal of the ancient House Feng. House Yu may be a hidden noble house, but they were the strongest hidden noble house with 2 sky-class masters. If he could get House Yu to join House Feng's side, then it would be a huge contribution to Feng Nitian. It would become a bargaining chip for him to fight for the position of the head of the house. Originally, Nitian had promised Yushan to kill Yu Bing in the test, but the rules changed. Even if he came from an ancient noble house, he wouldn't dare go against the rules of the Ice Palace test. Although the Ice Palace wouldn't kill him if he went against the rules, they'd talk to the elders of House Feng for sure. Nitian would lose face in front of the elders, and it wouldn't be good for him to become the head of the house. So he had no choice but to do it tonight. The test hadn't started yet, and even if he killed Yu Bing, it wouldn't be against the rules of the Ice Palace. The Ice Palace wouldn't be able to say anything. Yushan took out a small laser ID card decryptor from his pocket and waved it in front of the door. Yu Bing's lock opened with a click. Even if he didn't meet Nitian, he'd be ready to kill Yu Bing in this test. This ID card decryptor was prepared for decrypting the door keys. Evidently, he brought it from home and didn't buy it here. There was no way he could buy something like this in such a short amount of time. No one. Although Yushan didn't turn on the lights, he could clearly see the situation in the room with the help of the lights from the square outside the window. A cultivator's eyes and ears were better than the average person's, so Yushan could tell with a glance that there was no one in the room. What Yushan could see, Feng Nitian could see as well. There were no cabinets or anything like that in the room. And the bed was sealed with wood as well, it couldn't be hidden under the bed. Is there anyone in the washroom? Nitian asked. Yushan opened the bathroom door and took a look. He shook his head and said no. Nitian turned on the lights in the room and this time he could see more clearly. There was no one in the room. Not here. Nitian was a little disappointed. He'd used the arts in vain, and it didn't work. Could it be in Lingyi's room next door? My cousin and Lingyi are really close, he always goes there. Yushan guessed. That's possible, Nitian nodded. Then, let's go next door? In for a penny, in for a pound, we'll kill Lingyi as well? Yushan's eyes flashed with hatred. Nitian bro, your range is 3 meters, and no one can move within 3 meters. Let's kill Lingyi as well. That won't do. Nitian shook his head after hearing that Yushan wanted to kill Lingyi as well. Why? Yushan paused. Lingyi Zhang Naipeo said that he wanted him dead, and if I do anything to him, I'll be meddling in other people's business. Nitian waved his hand. Besides, I heard that Zhang Naipeo doesn't want to kill Lingyi directly. He wants to keep him alive for his Liang bro to do it himself, so if I kill Lingyi now, I'll be going against Zhang Naipeo. We're helping him, it shouldn't be a big deal, right? Besides, are you scared of Zhang Naipeo, Nitian bro? Yushan said, unwilling to give up. I'm not scared, I just don't want to offend him. Nitian, of course, saw through Yushan's tactics. But he didn't fight back. We're both from the ancient level. There's no point in making enemies. I see. Yushan was disappointed, so we're just going to let it go? Don't worry. I'll take care of it for you in the test. You can't kill people in the test, but crippling them isn't a problem. As long as they're still breathing, it's not against the rules. Crippling them won't be a threat to you, right? Nitian smiled casually. That's true. Yushan relaxed. If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble you, Nitian bro. I'll leave Yubing to you. Chapter 1496. Feng Nitian didn't touch Lin Yi, not because he was afraid of Lin Yi, but because he was afraid that Lin Yi would retaliate after he killed Yubing. He wouldn't know what to do then, and he wouldn't know what to do. If he did, he'd definitely offend Zhang Naipeo's side. This was Zhang Naipeo's grudge, and the disciples of the ancient level were all prideful. They wouldn't allow others to interfere with his grudge with others. If he didn't do anything, wouldn't he be waiting for Lin Yi to attack them? One could say that Feng Nitian had considered everything. He was one of the strong contenders for the head of House Feng, and he wasn't a reckless person. At this moment, Lin Yi and Yubing, who were in the room next door, heard the conversation clearly. Yubing hadn't slept yet, the test was tomorrow, and he was extremely nervous. He couldn't sleep well at this time, and when he heard the noise at the door, he woke up immediately. Hearing that Yushan wanted to kill him, Yubing's face flashed with anger. He didn't think that Yushan would be this cruel. Lin Yi only wanted to cripple Yushan, but Yushan wanted to kill him. You heard that? You're kind, but your cousin isn't. Lin Yi said faintly as he saw the anger on Yubing's face. Oh. Yubing took a deep breath, as if he had made a big decision. You're right. There are some things that I can't change. Rather than living in fear of being killed by my cousin in the future, I might as well take care of it once and for all. Huh. Lin Yi smiled. You should have thought it through long ago. The night passed peacefully, and the next morning at 5:30, Lin Yi came back to reality from the training space. He called Yubing and went to the washroom to wash up. Because Yubing had Lin Yi as his alarm clock, he didn't have to worry about being late for the test. After being woken up by Lin Yi, he quickly washed up and waited with Lin Yi for the people from the Ice Palace to arrive. It was only 6 o'clock, but the plaza in front of the inn was already filled with disciples who had come to participate in the trial. Everyone was waiting for the arrival of the Ice Palace's emissary. Even Zhang Naipeo and Feng Nitian didn't dare waste time as they waited with the others. At the peak of the ice mountain where the Ice Palace was located. This is the name list and information of the participants. Please have a look, Palace Master. Little Qing presented the registration book to a woman in white. This white-robed lady was the Ice Palace mistress. She was the most authoritative figure in the Ice Palace. She took the book from Qing's hands and started flipping through it. She looked from the beginning to the end, looking at everyone's background in great detail. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed after that. But she still asked, Aunt Qing, is Yang Qiqi the only girl in this test? Yes, Palace Master. And she's also a physical practitioner. Qing nodded. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Master this time. The white-robed lady sighed softly. It's all my fault for not being able to comprehend the Ice Snow Mountain's heritage, Palace Master. You're already a sky-class late-phase peak at such a young age. You're already a rare genius, but the heritage of the Ice Snow Mountain has something to do with one's constitution as well. Qing consoled. Looking at the other ancient sects and families, how many of them are as young as you are, Palace Master? But if we want to open the seal of the Heaven Stage Island, we must obtain the inheritance of ice from the Ice Spirit Mountain. The woman in white frowned. The Heaven Stage Conference is not far away. As one of the leaders of the Heaven Stage Conference, if we can't find the inheritor, the Heaven Stage Conference will lose its meaning. The other three houses don't have any news, right? It's not that easy to find an inheritor. Qing smiled bitterly. No news doesn't mean we haven't found one. To the ancient sects, the significance of an inheritor isn't just to open the island's seal. More importantly, it's a chance to break through the sky class and pursue the heavenly Tao. The white-robed lady said. So before the inheritor grows up, it won't be announced to the public. It's hard to avoid envious people causing trouble. That's true. Qing nodded. Palace Master, although you're not an inheritor, didn't you feel a part of the heritage as well? This can also be considered a fortuitous encounter. Only a small part. The white-robed lady smiled bitterly. Back then, before Master left, she hoped that I could obtain the heritage so that I could find her one day and meet her again. But now, if we can't open the island just because we haven't found an inheritor, then I'll be a sinner. How can I face her? Don't we still have some time? We can just take our time, there's no rush. If it really doesn't work, we can just do the test next year and relax the requirements. I don't believe that we can't find a suitable candidate, Qing suggested. That's the only way. But I'm still not satisfied. I need to see the participants myself. The white-robed lady said. That's fine, let's go bring the participants to the Ice Mountain then. Qing knew that the sect master wouldn't be at ease until she saw the only girl, Yang Qiqi. At 6:30 sharp, just as the participants were wondering where the emissary from the Ice Palace was, two figures, one green and one white, appeared in the sky. The girl in green was Elder Qing from yesterday, she was sky class mid-phase, and the girl in white beside her was sky class late-phase peak. Both of their Qinggong weren't weak, they appeared in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. In the midst of everyone's shock, Qing spoke first. This is the sect master of the Ice Palace. Sect master, please explain the rules and rewards of the test. This was supposed to be Qing's mission, but since the sect master of the Ice Palace was here herself, it was better for her to do the introductions. When Qing said that this girl in white was the sect master of the Ice Palace, everyone went into an uproar. Even Naipeo and Nitian were shocked. This confirmed their suspicions from yesterday. The sect master of the Ice Palace was a sky-class late-phase peak. Chapter 1497. Once one stepped into sky class, they would usually give up their position and go into isolation to pursue a higher level. They wouldn't be managing the family or the sect anymore. But this Ice Palace was different, their sect master was sky class late phase peak. There were only two possibilities. One was that there were too many sky class late phase peak practitioners in the Ice Palace, and the other was that the current sect master was simply too young. Reaching sky class late phase peak at such a young age had caught the elders off guard. And they didn't even have time to pick the next sect master. One had to know that not just anyone could be a sect master. After all, they needed to be raised from a young age, and had to have the ability to manage the entire Ice Palace. Although he didn't know what the reason was, the Ice Palace master was very young. Not only was she young, but she was also very beautiful. Compared to little Qing, who looked to be in her late teens, her looks were very normal. The Ice Palace master, on the other hand, was just like her name and position, like an ice princess. Elegant and refined, it was unforgettable to look at her. Of course, None of the participants dared to disrespect the sect master. She was a beauty, but they needed to be alive to admire her. They didn't even have the courage to look at a sky-class late-phase peak like this. Linny couldn't help but be surprised at the sect master's appearance. Of course, Linny wasn't surprised because the sect master was a beauty, but because of her age. She really did look like she was around 19, no older than 25. This was different from Green. He could tell with certainty that the sect master didn't use a pill like that, but that she really was that old. Perhaps she'd broken through to sky class when she was 18 or 19 years old, and that was why she'd kept her face forever. Aunt Ching, you do the talking. I'm just here to take a look. The sect master's eyes stopped on Chi-Chi, the only female participant. She couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. This girl looked pretty cool, and had a cold personality, but she wasn't the person she was looking for. Her body wasn't suited for the Ice Palace practitioner's arts. And so, after confirming that Chi-Chi couldn't do it, the sect master lost interest in staying. Aunt Ching? The cultivators present were in an uproar. Ching didn't look that old, but the sect master called her Aunt Ching. How old was the sect master? Could it be that she was really as young as she looked, only in her 20s? Linny wasn't too shocked, as Linny had already thought of this before, and the sect leader's Aunt Ching only confirmed Lin Yi's guess. Looking at the sect master, who was around the same age as him, and was already a sky-class late-phase peak, Linny could only smile bitterly. There was no way he could compete with her. Compared to a normal noble house, his advantage was still very obvious. But in a hidden noble house, his training talent and golden fingers were basically equal to the support of the noble house. And in the ancient world, Linny had no advantage at all. The ancient sects were not to be underestimated. No wonder his old man had said that the ancient sects were out of his control. It seemed like he'd have to rely on himself in the future. But Linny wasn't discouraged. His overall strength was still a far cry from Lin Yi's, but judging from the speed of his training these past few months, only that monster Zhang Naipeo would be able to compete with him. Who else would dare say they'd leveled up in a few months? With that, the sect master turned and left. Ching knew the sect master's personality, and didn't mind. The Ice Palace mistress had grown up in the Ice Palace, and had become the personal disciple of the Grand Elder. She was going to be the next palace mistress, so her childhood was a lonely one. She had no friends or playmates, and all she had to do was train day and night. That was why her personality was so cold. Now I'll announce the rules and rewards, Ching said as she looked at the crowd. Participants are not allowed to drive, and I will lead the group to the mountain on foot. You can bring spirit beasts along, but they can't be higher than Mystic Late Phase Peak, or you'll lose your right to participate. You can bring servants and followers, but they can't be higher than Golden Class. Servants and followers are not allowed to participate in the trial, nor are they allowed to fight, nor are they allowed to hurt the other party's servants or followers. You can attack the other party's spirit beasts, but you can't steal them. These rules had been in place for a long time, and the participants all nodded in understanding. Not many families had spirit beasts, and if they were too weak, they'd be a burden instead. As for servants and followers, these people wouldn't bring them. They weren't young masters or mistresses, and they'd need someone to wait on them when they came out. In fact, this rule was customized for the previous trial rules. If a trial taker was killed, the servants and attendants could also help to bring the corpse back. However, this method of bringing attendants was a little lacking in confidence and inauspicious, so this time no one brought them. Plus, the rules had been changed to not kill the opponent, and there was no need to bring servants and followers. If there are no objections, I'll talk about the rewards of the trial. In the trial, the top 3 with the most points will receive additional rewards from the Ice Palace. The rewards will be chosen from the elixirs and treasures collected in the trial, Ching said. And the top 10 with the most points will have the right to become an outer disciple of the Ice Palace, or the right to exchange for treasures. Does anyone have a problem with that? No. The crowd shook their heads. This was something mentioned in the invitation letter, and they didn't have too many objections to the rewards. Most of the people here were here for the outer disciple position. All right, pack your bags, we'll leave in an hour. Qing nodded. I'll wait for you here in an hour. Yes. The crowd nodded. They couldn't drive. Walking wasn't a problem for Lin Yi, but what about Xiao Xiao? The good thing was that this place was really cold. Even without the ice coffin, Xiao Xiao should be fine. But how were they going to bring her along? Chapter 1498. Fortunately, Lin Yi wasn't worried about the ice palace anymore. Since the ice palace said that he could bring Xiao Xiao along, then it didn't matter what his follower looked like, whether she was alive or dead, whether she walked on her own or carried on his back. She was his follower. This was Yu Bing's first time seeing Xiao Xiao, and seeing this beautiful and spirited girl lying in the ice coffin. Yu Bing's heart couldn't help but ache. No wonder Lin Yi would come all the way here just to find the medicine for her, even participating in the Ice Palace's test. This was a girl no weaker than his sister at this moment. Yu Bing realized just how fierce the competition around his sister was. You're really bringing her along? Yu Bing was a little shocked as he watched Lin Yi carry Xiao Xiao out of the Ice Palace. Yeah, that's for sure. Lin Yi nodded and took out some rope from the trunk, passing it to Yu Bing. Here, help me out. I'll carry Xiao Xiao, you help me tie her to my back. Yu Bing wanted to say, are you crazy? How dangerous was this? This test was already extremely dangerous, and now Lin Yi was going to carry someone. Wouldn't this be an extra burden, limiting his strength? But looking at Lin Yi's determined eyes, Yu Bing could only sigh and shake his head. All right. Lin Yi squatted down and put Xiao Xiao on his back, while Yu Bing helped secure Xiao Xiao onto Lin Yi's back. All right, thank you. Lin Yi stood up and jumped a couple of times, realizing that Yu Bing had tied him up really tightly. He nodded with a smile. Hey, I really don't know what to say. You're bringing someone to the test. This is the first time I've heard of it. Yu Bing sighed helplessly. I don't have much luggage, just a few medicine on me. This is enough. Then I won't go back to the inn. Lin Yi suddenly waved his hand towards the window of his room and said, Skybolt Pig, come down. Gigi. A small white shadow darted out of the window of Lin Yi's room and flew to Lin Yi's side. Profound rank spirit beast? Yu Bing jumped in fright. He'd been to Lin Yi's room many times, and he'd even slept there last night. How come he didn't notice that there was an ancient spirit beast in Lin Yi's room? But he doesn't have any offensive skills. He's just trash, Lin Yi said, nodding. GG. After listening to Lin Yi's evaluation, the Skybolt Pig suddenly felt wronged, but he didn't dare to have any dissatisfaction with him. He'd seen Lin Yi's miraculous in just a short amount of time. He'd already leveled up a few hundred years ago. Yu Bing nodded. He didn't think too much about it. From what he could see, this Skybolt Pig was probably the same as his sister's ancient spirit beast. It didn't have any offensive skills, but it had a body full of strength. Ancient spirit beasts were rare, but every hidden house had a few of them. So Lin Yi's pig wasn't that eye-catching. Every hidden house had at least a few ancient spirit beasts, but there were very few ancient spirit beasts that had offensive skills. So there weren't many disciples who brought ancient spirit beasts to the test. If they brought a normal ancient spirit beast, not only would it not be able to help, but they'd also have to take care of it. Wouldn't that be a burden? And so Lin Yi roughly looked around. There were only 4 or 5 people who went back to the inn to bring out their ancient spirit beasts, and their spirit beasts were at most early phase mystic class, the same level as the pig. So Lin Yi wasn't worried that the pig would be at a disadvantage. One had to know that when spirit beasts fought humans, it didn't matter what level it was. But when spirit beasts fought against spirit beasts, it was based on level. As long as the spirit beasts didn't cause trouble, Lin Yi didn't have to worry too much about them. An hour passed quickly, and Qing appeared in the plaza in front of the inn again. The disciples who were participating in the test were all packed up and ready to go. The news of Lin Yi carrying someone to the test had already spread. All the practitioners thought that there was something wrong with Lin Yi's head. Carrying a dead person to the test? Even if he was infatuated, he wouldn't be this crazy, right? Master Pao, do you think this Ling Yi ate too many retarded pills? Carrying a dead person to the test? Zhuang Niapeo looked at Linny and said mockingly, I think he's looking for death, isn't he? To go to hell with that damned girl of his? Niapeo was surprised as well. He didn't know what Linny was doing, but Niapeo was different from Zhuang Niapeo. His practitioner's arts were special, and he was more sensitive to external energy. He could feel that the girl on Linny's back wasn't dead, but even if she wasn't, she was on the brink of death. With his understanding of Linny, this guy wouldn't do something this stupid, would he? But he did it, and it was incomprehensible. Niapeo wanted to see who was on Linny's back, but Xiao Xiao's face was on Linny's shoulder, and her hair covered it. He couldn't see it clearly, and he gave up after a few glances. Who knows? Maybe she's here for a doctor? Niapeo shook his head. He couldn't think of any other reason for Linny to bring a half-dead girl to the test. Most of the practitioners thought the same as Niapeo and Zhuang Niapeo. They didn't know why Linny was doing this, but they all thought that Linny was crazy. The rest were the people who didn't care what happened to them. What happened to Linny had nothing to do with them. Yang Qiqi, for example, thought that Linny was carrying a girl on his back. She didn't care what he was doing. Qing looked at all the participants, mainly checking the level of the spirit beasts they brought, seeing if any of them exceeded the rules of the Ice Palace. She paused when she saw the person on Linny's back. But she didn't say anything. With her strength, she could feel Xiao Xiao's situation. She was on the brink of death. She didn't know why Linny brought her to the test, but Linny's actions didn't break the rules. Chapter 1499. As far as Qing was concerned, this woman was most likely Linny's lover. She was about to die, and Linny was coming to participate in the test. He was worried about leaving her alone at home, so he brought her along. It wasn't strange at all. Not bad. Looks like everyone's following the rules today. Qing looked at the people and the spirit beasts in their hands and nodded. The group couldn't help but smile bitterly. With the previous examples, who would dare do anything under the Ice Palace people's noses anymore? Wasn't that the same as asking for death? Follow me, everyone. On the way to the test, don't make any noise or fight. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. With that, Qing turned around and walked forward slowly. The group didn't dare delay and quickly followed. At first, Yushan wanted to instigate Nidian to do something to Yubing along the way, but it seemed like he couldn't do that now. The Ice Palace had already given the order, and no one dared to go against it. In the beginning, the road was flat and easy to walk on. However, after entering the range of the snowy mountain, it became more difficult to walk. In addition to the snowy sky, visibility was very low. Everyone activated their own inner force and mental cultivation to maintain their vigilance. Qing had already said that fighting wasn't allowed on the way to the test, but who could guarantee that there wouldn't be any ambushes? In this kind of situation where visibility was very poor, wouldn't it be very unlucky if they were ambushed? They were all mystic practitioners, and once they channeled their practitioner's arts, their eyes and ears were much sharper. They were able to keep up with Qing's footsteps. In fact, Qing was already suppressing her speed on purpose. Otherwise, with her sky-class strength, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was flying. How are you? Are you all right? Yubing was a little worried for Linny. After all, it was already hard for them to walk like this, and Linny was still carrying weights. It was obvious that when Linny walked, he kept his body facing the wind so that the snow wouldn't hit Xiao Xiao's face. This might not affect Xiao Xiao, but Linny was doing it subconsciously. Nothing. Linny smiled and said, she's actually very light. Moreover, carrying her makes me more motivated. I understand. Yubing looked at Linny, then at Xiao Xiao's chest on Linny's back, his face showing that he understood. Linny was speechless as he looked at Yubing's perverted face. Was this guy thinking dirty? The motivation he was talking about was Xiao Xiao's illness. No matter how hard it was, he had to keep moving forward. What did that have to do with this? But with Yubing's reminder, Linny realized that it was indeed quite comfortable. After walking for an hour, they finally arrived at the foot of the mountain. At the foot of the mountain there was a group of Ice Palace disciples. They were all women in white, but they didn't look as young as the sect master and little Qing. Their appearances were also very ordinary, around 30 to 40 years old. Their white robes were different from the sect master's. The sect master's robe was a very elegant white gauze, while these disciples were all wearing white cotton robes, looking very plain. What surprised him, however, was that all of these Ice Palace disciples were above Earth class. The strongest one was an Earth class late phase peak. Of course, there weren't any Sky class. Once they stepped into Sky class, they wouldn't just be normal disciples anymore. Alright, this is the starting point of the test. After Qing stood still, she turned to the participants and said, "To be fair, there will be disciples of the Ice Palace who will send you to different locations on the mountain. The locations will be random. Now you can all form your own teams, but each team can't have more than 3 people. If there are more than 3, you'll need to split into 2 groups and meet up on the mountain." No one objected to what the Ice Palace was doing. If everyone were to be together, then they'd be thrown into chaos at the start of the test, losing the purpose of the test. But the restriction of 3 people disappointed a lot of them. They'd already contacted quite a lot of people before, thinking that there was strength in numbers. They wouldn't get bullied if they were together, but now that they were limited to 3 people, there was no point in finding more people. Although it was said that they could find their own rendezvous after reaching the top of the mountain, let's not talk about how easy it would be to find them. Even if they found them, the other party's group might not be able to merge with their own group. They might have already joined another group. Naipeo naturally formed a team with Zhuang Niapeo and Zhuang Niaoqiang. These 2 were the first to meet Naipeo, and they were the most familiar with him. The others couldn't compare. Nidian, on the other hand, formed a team with Yushan. As for Zhao Qikuan, he could only form a team with Zhao Qizhou. There was no other choice. He couldn't let Qizhou be in his own team, could he? Lin Yi naturally formed a team with Yu Bing, but he had Xiao Xiao on his back. Even so, it wouldn't exceed the limit of 3 people. Very quickly, after everyone had split into groups, Qing gave the order, and all the Ice Palace disciples began to move. Each of them grabbed a participant and flew off in different directions of the mountain. Of course, the people in the same team naturally went in the same direction. The snow mountain was covered in white light, and the disciples were very familiar with the route, but the participants weren't. They were thrown in different directions, and they didn't even have a sense of direction. What do we do now? Yu Bing and Lin Yi were thrown in a place where there were no other participants. Yu Bing looked at the white snow and couldn't help but ask, "Search for the fire spirit's fruit while searching for treasures. That way you'll be able to pass the test." Lin Yi said, "Alright, I'll listen to you." Yu Bing and Lin Yi were together, and Lin Yi was the leader. He felt that compared to Lin Yi was much stronger than him. Yu Bing was considered one of the geniuses in Houseu, but compared to Lin Yi, he was nothing. Be it in terms of intelligence or strength, he was nothing. "Skybolt Pig, where is the fire spirit's fruit? Can you sense it?" Lin Yi turned to Skybolt Pig. Oink! Skybolt Pig shook his head. Chapter 1500. Oink oink. The Thunder Pig felt wronged, but he couldn't explain himself. In a moment of desperation, he used his paw to write a few words on the snow. "The snow mountain is too big. I can't sense it that far, but I can sense other treasures. If I look around, I might find the fire spirit's fruit." Fuck. If you can write, why didn't you write earlier? Lin Yi didn't think that Skybolt Pig could write. He got even angrier. "You can write? Why didn't you write before?" Gee. Skybolt Pig was even more wronged. "I can't hold a pen, so I can only write on the snow." After he finished, he even showed Lin Yi his scissors. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Alright, then we'll go look for treasures first. You can sense where the fruit is on the way." Gigi. The Skybolt Pig nodded in agreement. Lin Yi and Skybolt Pig's conversation made Yu Bing click his tongue in wonder. Even though he had seen many spiritual beasts, there were very few spiritual beasts that could understand human language and understand human language. Not to mention, not only could it understand human language, but it could also write. Yu Bing had never heard of such a thing before. This Lin Yi really could bring him surprises. It was as if all sorts of miraculous things weren't that miraculous when it came to him. You pig, you can find treasures? Yu Bing finally understood why Lin Yi brought a spirit beast that didn't seem to have any attack abilities to participate in the test. It had other abilities. The test's grading was based on the number of treasures gathered, and with this little thing here, he wouldn't have to worry about not getting points. We'll be relying on him to find the fruit, otherwise where am I supposed to find it in this snowy mountain? Lin Yi nodded, but don't tell anyone about this. Don't worry, I'll keep it a secret. Yu Bing nodded solemnly. He knew the value of this skybolt pig. If its abilities were as Lin Yi said, then it would be a priceless treasure. Even the ancient sects would drool over it, let alone the hidden houses. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't purposely wipe away the words the pig had written. The wind blew and the words disappeared very quickly. The two of them followed behind the skybolt pig and walked forward. Yang Qiqi was in a team by herself. She didn't know anyone and didn't want to team up with anyone. Other than the test, she was here to get the exchange rights for the Ice Palace's treasures. She heard that only the Ice Palace had that herb, and for her injured sisters she had to find it. Otherwise, even a miracle doctor wouldn't be able to save them. It's an 8-leaf grass. Yang Qiqi didn't expect to see an 8-leaf grass growing on the snow not far from where she was standing. This was one of the more obvious elixirs, and while it wasn't that high in level, it was easy to spot. It was much easier to find than the ones hidden under the snow, and so Yang Qiqi excitedly took out her knife and carefully cut off the 8-leaf grass, putting it in her bag. Beep beep. Yang Qiqi's card beeped twice, and she quickly took it out to see that the number had changed from 0 to 5. It seemed like the 8-leaf grass was worth 5 points. It wasn't much, but it was still a win. A good start is half the battle. A smile appeared on Yang Qiqi's cool face. Lil Sis Joe, this time, I'll definitely help you get that herb. Yang Qiqi clenched her fists, and the determination returned to her face as she walked forward. It had to be said that Yang Qiqi was quite lucky. It didn't take long before she found another snow mushroom under an unknown tree. Looking at the color, it was at least 100 years old. Compared to the 8-leaf grass, this was a true practitioner's medicine. Even hidden houses didn't have many of them. Yang Qiqi looked left and right subconsciously, making sure that there was no one around before making her way over to the mushroom. Yang Qiqi was very excited. She had crammed a lot of knowledge on spirit herbs before coming to the test, and naturally, she knew how valuable it was. If the 8-leaf grass was worth 5 points, then a normal snow mushroom would be worth at least 100, and this one that was over 100 years old was even more valuable. Yang Qiqi didn't think that her luck would be this good. Wasn't this too smooth? But just as Yang Qiqi was about to cut the mushroom down, a white python suddenly shot out of a hole in the tree, pouncing at Yang Qiqi. Yang Qiqi jumped in fright, suddenly remembering that the information she crammed mentioned that near treasures that were older than a few decades old, there would be beasts that lived there. These beasts could feel the chi of the treasure, and living beside it would benefit them as well. This was what they called becoming spirits. Actually, becoming spirits was too much of a mythical. The real situation was that normal beasts were transforming into spirit beasts. When a beast absorbed enough chi, it would produce chi within its body, and it would slowly evolve into a spirit beast. It wasn't an ancient spirit beast that was born with it, but these evolved spirit beasts were usually stronger than ancient ones. Ancient spirit beasts were just the descendants of spirit beasts with a purer bloodline. They had some magical abilities, but they didn't necessarily have that much offensive power. Like the skybolt pig, it only had the ability to find treasures, but it didn't have that much offensive power. General Weiwu, on the other hand, was obviously strong. It could punch and kick its enemies, and this was the power of an evolved spirit beast. But it was fortunate that Qiqi was an assassin and a physical practitioner of Qinggong. Her reflexes were extremely fast, and she retreated subconsciously the moment the snake came charging at her, barely dodging the attack. The python didn't chase after Qiqi, only standing guard in front of the mushroom, not letting Qiqi get any closer. Evidently, it treated the snow mushroom as its private property, and no one else was allowed to touch it. Big Snake, let's discuss this. Can you give me the snow mushroom? I really need it. I need the Ice Palace's exchange rights. Young Chi-Chi didn't have much confidence in winning against this giant snake, so she had to discuss first. Didn't the information say so? Some spirit beasts that were about to become spirits had their own spirituality and could understand human speech. Buzz dash, the python hissed at young Chi-Chi, full of hostility. Chapter 1501. But young Chi-Chi still took a step forward, trying to get closer to the snow mushroom. But before she could, the white python pounced at her with a swoosh. Chi-Chi knew that her negotiation had failed after seeing the python's action. It didn't matter if it understood her or not. It wouldn't let her get the mushroom so easily. Chi-Chi gritted her teeth, not knowing if she should give up or not. But looking at this snowy mountain, she knew that treasures weren't that easy to find. If she really gave up on this mushroom, who knew if she'd be able to find other treasures in the future? Moreover, even if they found it, with the giant python guarding this place, there would probably be other spirit beasts guarding other places. I'll do it. Chi-Chi gritted her teeth and took out another poison dagger. She aimed it at the snake's head and plunged it in. If it were any other mystic, this python would be hard to deal with. But if two mystic masters worked together, it wouldn't be hard to take it down. After all, this python hadn't evolved into a true spirit beast. It wasn't even at golden class yet. It didn't even need two mystic masters. Just one mystic would be able to take it down. But while Chi-Chi had the strength of a mystic, her training was a mystic physical practitioner's qigong. She might be mystic, but she didn't have the attack power of a mystic. With a dull clang, Chi-Chi's dagger stabbed into the head of the python, but it only scratched the skin a little, leaving a superficial wound. It didn't do much to the python, but the snake seemed to have been stimulated by the pain. It opened its mouth wide and bit at Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi was fast, but her right hand was holding the dagger, and the dagger was near the snake's head. She didn't have time to pull it back, and the snake's teeth dug into her arm, forming a bone-deep wound. Blood flowed out in an instant. Chi-Chi was in pain, but she didn't let go of the dagger. She knew very well that if she lost the dagger, she wouldn't be able to beat the python unless she gave up and ran. She'd become a meal in its stomach. The enraged snake had bitten Chi-Chi's arm, but it didn't give up on attacking her. Chi-Chi's stab earlier had clearly made the snake hold a grudge, and it pounced on Chi-Chi again. Chi-Chi had no other choice. She could only bite down and swing the dagger again. Hit the snake where it hurts, but Chi-Chi didn't know where to start with this python. She could only randomly stab at the python's body, and after the pain the python went even crazier. Not only did it want to bite Chi-Chi, it even swung its tail at her. The tail was huge and Chi-Chi wanted to dodge it, but she couldn't do it in time. She fell to the ground. Chi-Chi was shocked. Her dagger was enough to kill people, but against a python it was too small. It wasn't enough at all. Seeing the snake coming at her again, young Chi-Chi had no choice but to use her dagger to attack the snake, stabbing it again and again. But the snake bit down on her leg, tearing off a chunk of flesh. Oh! Chi-Chi was tearing up from the pain, but she gritted her teeth and held it in. She swung the dagger around, imagining the python as the person she hated the most. She stabbed it again and again. Linny, 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 I'll stab you to death. I'll stab you to death. It was as if the poison on the dagger had taken effect after taking a bite out of Chi-Chi's flesh. It didn't even have time to swallow it before it fell to the ground, motionless. Phew! The poison's finally working? Young Chi-Chi let out a long breath and patted her racing heart, mumbling to herself, what a close shave I got with my life. No wonder even Uncle Tombstone said that the test was dangerous, that a snake almost ate me. But she'd still defeated the snake in the end, and Chi-Chi's lips curved into a relaxed smile. This snow Ganoderma should be worth quite a lot of points, right? As for the injuries, it was a bit more serious this time, but as an assassin it was normal for Chi-Chi to get injured. She could take it. Chi-Chi got up from the ground, limping as she looked at her bloodied arms and legs. She didn't dare slow down, and took out a small bottle from her pocket. This was the medicine Lin Yi had given her. Young Chi-Chi carefully opened the bottle and sprinkled the herbs on her legs and arms, not wanting to waste a single drop. Man, there's not much left. I should ask for more when I see that guy. Chi-Chi didn't have the slightest awareness of being ungrateful, as if she didn't even remember the time when she mistook the snake for Linny and stabbed it with her dagger. After applying the herbs, Chi-Chi didn't dare waste any time. Who knew if her fight would attract the attention of others? And so Chi-Chi didn't rest as she limped over, ready to cut the snow Ganoderma. Not far from the mountain, there were two teams that seemed to have found the same herb at the same time. They were in a stalemate, ready to fight at any moment. But the strength of the two teams were about the same. One team had one mystic early phase, one late phase, and one mid-phase. The other team, on the other hand, had two peak late-phase masters and one mid-phase master. And so, if these two teams were to fight, it would be hard to tell who would win. And so, in a situation like this, it was a battle of patience. But this scene was seen by Zhang Niepao, Zhuang Niepao, and Zhuang Niaoqiang. Master Pao, there's another group of fat sheep up ahead. Zhuang Niepao pointed at the two teams excitedly. One couldn't blame him for being so excited. Their team didn't even need to worry about finding treasures. They just needed to find people. Without a second word, they just started robbing, and so it hadn't even been half a day since the test started, and he and Niaoqiang had already gotten 50 points each, and Niepao himself had already gotten more than 100 points. Not bad. Go get them to hand over their points. Niepao nodded as if this was something natural. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.